What's up guys, this is your favorite fanfic YouTuber, the Fanfic Majesty, and welcome to another amazing video. You can follow me on Patreon for exclusive stories. Bleach Kill Yhawch. 1KY. Chapter 1. A strange uncle fell from the sky, seeking evaluation of the collection of flowers. Seoul Society, North Rukongai District 80. A young man with a shabby dress and a little dirty body was hiding in a dark alley with a nervous expression on his face. At this time, he was secretly observing a weapon fight that had occurred for unknown reasons. When the weapon fight was about to come to an end, a fallen soul caught the boy's attention. Hidden in the alley, he stared straight at the dark rice balls that fell from his body. The battle between you and me continued, and the young man still stared at the rice balls intently, while conjuring tricks. He had to take out a dagger and hold it tightly in his right hand. Maybe the boy himself hadn't noticed it, maybe because he was too nervous, his hand holding the dagger was trembling slightly. Just when this weapon fight entered the white-hot stage, the teenager directly held the dagger with his backhand, and rushed to the battle group of the weapon fight at the fastest speed. His target was not the souls who participated in the weapon fight, but the dark rice balls on the ground. With an unusually thin body, he seemed to have exhausted all his strength and rushed towards his goal desperately. Before no one noticed, he quickly picked up the dark rice ball and stuffed it into his trouser pocket, and ran towards the south of this Rukongai. He took out a rice ball with his left hand and slammed it into the eye, while madly fleeing this place of right and wrong. Just when he naively thought that he had succeeded, a noisy scream came from behind him. That brat again. Quick, catch him. Don't let him run away. Brothers, he took our food. Kill him. Dozens of brawny men armed with weapons swiftly chased in the direction of the young man's escape, dust and smoke everywhere. The souls who lived here, although they were already quite familiar with this scene, they quickly avoided the chasing people. Seeing that he was about to be overtaken, the young man went crazy and stuffed the remaining 2 rice balls into his eyes. While chewing bitterly the food in his mouth, he held the dagger in his hand tighter. After a period of strenuous pursuit, the young man was finally forced to a forest in the south by the chasing soldiers behind him. At this time, he is undoubtedly in desperation. In front of him was a fierce chaser, and behind him was a big river with turbulent water. The irresistible boy looked at the people in front of him with fierce eyes, and swallowed the last bite of the rice ball that he had chewed in his mouth by the way. Read more at mtlarchive.com. Smelly boy, see where you are going this time. Humph, said a brawny man who was obviously the boss. The young man didn't speak, he just looked at everyone in front of him coldly, and quickly calculated in his heart. It's been 2 years since I've traveled into this world, and I am afraid that it will be more unfortunate today. Taifeng is a traverser. He was a street rider who accidentally crossed into Shinigami's world. Different from other people's time when he traveled, he has been living hard and tenacious all the time after he traveled here for 2 years. When he just crossed here, he unexpectedly found himself feeling hungry. This is good news for him, because it proves that his spiritual power level is higher than the ordinary Lixin here, and he can practice. However, this is undoubtedly bad news for him. Because he was just a teenager now, although he wasn't able to say that he was powerless, but compared with those who have lived here for a long time, he was indeed a lot weaker. At first, Taifeng also tried to make some friends. However, living in the Zaraki district, with the worst security conditions in the Seoul society for 2 years, really made him understand what the weak and the strong eat. The souls living here are like beasts in the jungle. They often fight for a bite, and sometimes even meet with swordsmen. Being friends with beasts, Taifeng doesn't have that kind of leisure. Because it has been so long since the journey, it is most important for him to survive by any means. Unable to retreat, Taifeng looked at the fierce crowd in front of him, with a cruel smile on his face, and immediately prepared to jump into the rushing river behind him. This kid is crazy. Gosh, this lunatic. Just as everyone was amazed by Taifeng's crazy behavior, the sudden change occurred. A dazzling fire blasted straight down from the sky and hit everyone on the ground. F***ck. Taifeng, who was ready to go to justice, couldn't help exclaiming after seeing this scene. Between the sparks and the fire, the flame smashed into the position of many chasing soldiers impartially. Rumble. Under a strong shock wave, screams echoed one after another, echoing in the sky above this area. At this moment, Taifeng hurriedly hugged a big tree next to him to prevent himself from being drawn into the river behind him by the air current driven by the shock wave. After a few minutes, he patted the dust on his body, looking at the angry chasers not far away, and his nervous mood slowly eased. Although the crisis has been resolved, Taifeng, who has been on the line of life and death all year round, did not leave in a hurry. He took advantage of the trend and hid behind the big tree he had just hugged, and began to observe. How do you feel that something strange has been mixed into the chasing soldiers? But it's no wonder he was surprised, because there was a strange figure in the chasing soldiers. After a period of observation, after ensuring that there was no danger, Taifeng hurried to the messy place. He was even more curious about who this strange figure was than the chasers who had been cold. The strange man in front of him, who is about 2 meters tall and has a mustache, is undoubtedly the perpetrator of the tragedy just now. The gorgeous robe on his body was unexpectedly clean, obviously not a common product. A strange uncle fell from the sky. But why does it feel a bit familiar? Taifeng looked at the strange man curiously, and said to himself. He scratched his head in confusion, as if trying to remember something. Finally, He seemed to have thought of some key clue. He couldn't help but stepped back 2 steps nervously, and looked at the middle-aged man on the ground with incredible eyes. This is. Taifeng stammered. Asterisk. Thank you for reading this story at Hotmount Novel. CO Chapter 2 Unexpected Anti-Kill. Activate the system, seeking evaluation of the collection of flowers. Taifeng looked at the middle-aged man on the ground, feeling shocked at this moment. Long black hair, full of the iconic mustache, thin and slender figure with that gorgeous robe, the recognition is not too high. It turned out to be Yhwach. Taifeng, who has traveled to the Shinigami world for more than 2 years, has always wanted to figure out when he is in the timeline. However, after many inquiries, he has not heard a few names he knows well. This also made him wonder if he had crossed the wrong place. Because in the current Soul Society, there is not only no spiritual arts academy, but even the Gote 13th division has not been established. Just as Taifeng was thinking about it, a suffocating Reiatsu burst out of Yhwach's body. What's the situation? Taifeng, who is still a weak chicken, was directly crushed on the ground because of this violent Reiatsu. He was a little desperate to find that no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't move a bit. Just as he was trying to get out of trouble, the violent Reiatsu that was pressing on him suddenly disappeared. At this time, a majestic voice came to Taifeng's ears. An ant-like flowing soul. Come to this king. After this series of changes, Taifeng already guessed something. Why did Yhwach fall from the sky? It may not be clear to others, but for Taifeng, who is an anime fan, it is simply too simple. Because in the Shinigami anime, Yhwach was defeated only twice. Once 1,000 years before the beginning of the plot, Yhwach played against Yamamoto Genryūsai, was severely injured and entered a state of suspended animation. The second time, he was finally beheaded by Kurosaki Ichigo in the anime's Millennium Blood War. After careful observation and thinking, Taifeng was very sure that the current Yhwach must be seriously injured. I am afraid there is only one person who can make the famous Quincy King Yhwach seriously injured. That is Yamamoto Genryūsai, the captain of the Gote 13th division, who is known as the strongest Shinigami. The timeline question that has always puzzled Taifeng finally has an answer. It seems that I have traveled 1,000 years before the beginning of the Shinigami world plot. I've lived here for so long in a muddle-headed manner, it's fine if the golden finger hasn't been activated, and now I even ran into Yhwach. Taifeng had to sigh in his heart that his luck is really bad. Because he knows very well, even Yhwach in a severely injured state can shake himself to death with Reiatsu alone. Including the violent Reiatsu who just appeared, it must have been deliberately done by the other party. Taifeng is already in a dilemma now, neither running nor not running. Didn't you hear what the king said? Yhwach's voice appeared in Taifeng's ears again. Although he didn't know what kind of medicine was sold in Yhwach gourd. But I decided to give in falsely first, and then wait and see the changes. At this moment, a sudden scream came from Yhwach's mouth. Under a burst of hot orange flames, the gorgeous robe on his body was burned out, and countless red cracks appeared all over his body. Flames spewed out from the red cracks one after another, and Yhwach at this moment had already turned into a human-shaped flame. Read more at mtlarchive.com. The extremely hot flames were still burning, and Yhwach also released more Reiatsu to suppress the flames burning on his body. He tried to control Reiatsu's strength, so as to reduce the pain on his body. He shouted hoarsely, "This damn seal. Ah, Yamamoto old thief, I want you to die." Although Taifeng was nervous now, he still tried to calm himself down. He looked at Yhwach, who was already immature, ready to escape from this place of right and wrong at any time. Because now, being alive is the most important thing to him. Just as Taifeng was thinking about how to get away, a burst of stronger Reiatsu suddenly fell on him. He was overturned to the ground again. Taifeng's whole person is suffering to the extreme now, but he knows very well in his heart that if this continues, he will definitely be shaken to death by this violent Reiatsu. After a careful observation, he discovered an extremely important problem. That is, the violent flame that just burned on Yhwach's body didn't even threaten him at all. Combined with what Yhwach just said, it looks like it should be the old Yamamoto, who has set some kind of powerful anti-injury seal on him. This kind of seal may be able to limit Yhwach to the greatest extent. According to the Shinigami manga, Yhwach was defeated by the old man Yamamoto. It took 900 years to recover my heartbeat, and another 90 years to regain consciousness, and finally it took another 9 years to regain my strength. Then, Yhwach, who has just experienced the torment of the seal, must be extremely weak now. As for why he fell from the sky, this is not what Taifeng should consider. Because he felt that if he hesitated anymore, he would be dead and ugly. Don't stop at all. Fight. Although Taifeng still has no bottom in his heart, but the matter has ended, he can only put himself to death and live afterwards. At this moment, his eyes were full of firmness, and he began to walk slowly towards Yhwach's location. Step. 2 steps. 3 steps. ... A short distance of 3 or 4 meters gave Taifeng a feeling of near collapse. Fortunately, he finally came to Yhwach's side with a dagger in his hand. At this time, Yhwach, who was seriously injured, finally managed to force Yamamoto Genryūsai into his body and temporarily suppress the seal. Just as he was thinking about how to get away, he saw Taifeng with cold eyes appearing in front of him. Yhwach couldn't help feeling nervous. Because he just used all his strength to suppress the seal, Reiatsu has run out of abilities, his current state can be described as extremely poor. He knew very well in his heart that his condition might not be any better than ordinary people who were seriously injured and dying. He never dreamed of the existence of ants in his own eyes. At this moment, he would look at him coldly with a terrifying look in his eyes. Just when Yhwach was about to say something, he only saw a cold dagger pierced into his heart. Puff! A mouthful of scarlet blood flowed from Yhwach's horns, and his eyes widened in shock with an unbelievable expression on his face. This ant-like existence dared to attack himself. Yhwach trembled unwillingly, feeling that his vitality was losing rapidly. Taifeng was afraid that his friend would suddenly violent, so he hurriedly paid a few more dollars. Although, the dagger in his hand encountered resistance for a while. However, after pouring all the reiatsu in his body onto the dagger, he still managed to add dozens of new wounds to Yhwach. After a few seconds, Yhwach's whole life was gone, and it was completely cold. Taifeng would never have imagined that the first meeting between himself and the final boss of the Shinigami world would end in this way. But fortunately, he also escaped. If I had the slightest hesitation just now, I might have been killed by the recovered Yhwach. After observing the surrounding environment with vigilant eyes, Taifeng prepared to get up and leave this place of right and wrong. At this moment, a vain mechanical sound appeared in his mind. Ding! Congratulations to the host for completing the first kill and activating the strongest box picking system. Quote? Quote. Taifeng was stunned, because his long-awaited golden finger finally appeared. With the disappearance of the system prompt, his attention was also attracted by the dozens of large and small boxes scattered around his feet. Eating chicken game, Taifeng whispered to himself while squatting down quickly to study. Ding! The falling boxes around the host are detected. Is the host all turned on? Happiness came too suddenly. Taifeng suppressed his inner excitement and hurriedly responded to the system. Turn on. As he gave the order to open the box, a faint light came into his eyes. Chapter 3 Get Rewards. Start planning, seeking collection of flowers evaluation. Taifeng stared closely. Dozens of faint rays of light appeared one after another. He can't wait to know what spoils he will draw this time. Ding! Congratulations to the host for acquiring the dilapidated My X5, Rusty Iron Rod X3, Reiatsu X15, Quincy Bloodline, and Special Skill X1. As soon as the system prompt sounded, Taifeng only felt a faint warm current flow into his body. Special skills. Let's see what it is. At this moment, a virtual screen appeared directly in front of his eyes. The strongest box picking system. Host. Taifeng. Age. 16. Lineage. Human soul, Quincy. Reiatsu. 95. Special skills. Omniscience and Omnipotence. Kendo. None. White hits. None. Shunpo. None. Kido. None. After Taifeng checked his personal character panel, there was a wave of waves in his heart. Because he actually gained Yhwach's omniscience and omnipotence. He had a simple understanding of this skill of smashing the sky while watching Shinigami anime. He never thought that he actually possessed this ability. But now, Taifeng is not the time to study these slowly. There has just been a huge movement here, and it is estimated that Shinigami who will be patrolled will soon be attracted. Although he already possesses the omniscience and omnipotence ability, his current strength is still too weak, and he has to leave this place of right and wrong first. Taifeng didn't have any muddles, and quickly left the area where the incident occurred just now, and returned to his usual residence with the fastest speed. 10 minutes later, a group of Shinigami in Death Tyrant costumes, led by a white-haired man, came to the incident area. If Taifeng were still here, he would definitely recognize who the leader Shinigami was. It was the deputy of the old man Yamamoto, and later Chojiro Sasaki, the deputy captain of the 1st Division of the 13th Gotei Division. Block the scene immediately. Report the information here to Captain Yamamoto. Chojiro looked at the dozen corpses in front of him, and while instructing loudly, he fixed his gaze on Yhwach's corpse. He muttered with a solemn expression. It seems something is not simple. Read more at mtlarchive.com. At the same time, in the shadow world of Soul Society Seraiti. Buildings built with Link C began to collapse one after another. 25 figures in white clothes, after a brief gathering, scattered around and quickly disappeared. After Taifeng ran for a while, panting and returning to his residence. After confirming the surrounding environment again and again, he opened the system panel again and began to check in detail the introduction of omniscience and omnipotence. After a period of detailed research, Taifeng began to recall Yhwach's ability in the anime. He came to a conclusion based on the original book. Yhwach's omniscience and omnipotence can not only know the past and the future, but can also actively empower anyone with various abilities. When Yhwach needs strength, he can take the initiative to take back all the strength that empowers people. However, Yhwach's omniscience and omnipotence seem to be limited. For example, the power of illusions and dreams can affect Yhwach's omniscience to a certain extent. Of course, this is just Taifeng's analysis based on the plot of the comic. So far, he has discovered the most important point. That is, Yhwach will not use omniscience and omnipotence at all. This kind of ability is simply a violent thing for him. Because the strongest of omniscience and omnipotence is to break the boundaries of cognition. In short, it is development. Although Yhwach has mastered certain destructive powers, this power has reached the maximum threshold. It's like Max, the highest skill in an online game. As a traverser, Taifeng's ability to recognize things is comparable to that of the characters in the comics. It's no wonder that Yhwach will be killed by himself as a traverser after being defeated by Yamamoto Old Man. But so surely despising the other party is only because the current timeline is still 1,000 years ago when Shinigami's plot began. Yhwach, who is still in the groping stage, is not unjustly defeated. As for the events after the beginning of the plot, Taifeng has full certainty to influence the direction of the plot. Because he still has 1,000 years to plan, and he is also familiar with all the things that will happen in the world of Shinigami. Therefore, he wants to become stronger as soon as possible before the old man Yamamoto sets up the Gotei 13th Division, so that he can make his first plan. Although there is still plenty of time, Taifeng dare not slack in the slightest. After all, before acquiring the system, he had lived through that kind of lingering life. Taifeng has secretly vowed in his heart that since he has obtained the box-picking system and the power of omnipotence, then, he must break the boundaries of this world and become the strongest. Now, he has to start preparing for his first step plan. As we all know, Rukongai outside Saraiti is divided into 320 areas from 1 to 80 in 4 directions, southeast, northwest and northwest. Among them, the lower the number of Rukongai, the worse the public security life and other conditions. Among all Rukongai, there is no shortage of strong wandering souls that can be cultivated. In the strong flowing soul, there are bound to be some murderers who do no evil. Their acting style is far from the word justice, and it has caused Taifeng to suffer a lot. After acquiring the box-picking system and omniscience and omnipotence, he was ready to target these murderers and launch his first plan. From the weak to the strong step by step, killing and tempering are naturally inevitable. Facing the rising sun, Taifeng stepped out of his residence. Now, he finally started his first plan. Chapter 4 Encounter the Evil, Seeking Evaluation of the Collection of Flowers. Rukongai District 79, Kaolu District. A teenager casually wiped the blood on the saber with a coarse cloth. Under the horrified eyes of many onlookers, he calmly pinned the saber to his waist, and then turned and left. He calmly walked towards the junction of Kaolu District and Zaraki District, as if the dozens of murderers who had just been killed by himself had nothing to do with him. It's been more than a year, and I didn't expect to get a talent for kendo by accident today. Taifeng walked calmly while muttering to himself. At this time, the system panel that appeared in front of him also gave him a certain understanding of his own strength improvement this time. The strongest box-picking system. Host. Taifeng. Age. 17. Lineage. Human soul, Quincy. Reiatsu. 509. Special skills. Omniscience and Omnipotence. Kendo. Mastery. White hits. The basics. Shunpo. None. Kido. None. There are fewer and fewer Reiatsu, and it seems that no matter how many murderers you kill, you can't get a bigger improvement in a short time. It's the kendo talent obtained this time, you can think of a way to study it. Quote. Since Taifeng obtained the system until now, he has been practicing hard. At the same time, he also personally killed hundreds of Rukongai villains. In this year's time, Taifeng has never stopped fighting. From the beginning, he often suffered serious injuries, and now he can easily settle dozens of opponents with just a few moves. I am afraid that only he himself knows the hardship. But today is indeed a good day for Taifeng. Because, already in a bottleneck, he unexpectedly picked up his kendo talent from a box dropped by a murderer. Although, it is just the most common kendo basis. However, for Taifeng, who has omniscience and omnipotence, he can't wait. After returning to his residence, Taifeng began to figure it out in his mind. Compared to the various kendo schools in the Shinigami world, he just feels that there is no need to learn at all. In his opinion, those kendo skills that are often called killing skills are nothing more than bells and whistles. Read more at mtlarchive.com. Because in the face of absolute power, any so-called skills are not worth mentioning. What he needs to do now is to figure out a way to raise his kendo level to the realm of breaking 10,000 magic with one force. Although, this may take a long time. But Taifeng believes that with the help of the system and, all-knowing and all-powerful, it is only a matter of time before the swordsmanship of one move to defeat the enemy can be developed. After turning on, all-knowing almighty, a variety of swordsmanship movements appeared in his mind, and those movements were played in a loop like a slide. Taifeng understands and thinks time and time again, and quickly conducts various simulation experiments. Before he knew it, 3 days had passed, and in the end he still didn't get a result that satisfies him. Blindly talking about soldiers on paper really almost means, it seems that we can only seek a breakthrough in actual combat. After Taifeng made the decision, while putting away the system interface, he took the saber beside him and walked out of the residence, preparing for a new round of hunting. Second brother, this stinky kid killed your brother. A middle-aged man dressed in sackcloth, 5 big and 3 thick, pointed to Taifeng and said loudly. Taifeng, who had just walked out of his residence, obviously didn't expect to get into trouble so soon. With a smile on his face, he looked at the obviously unkind people not far away, without showing any panic. Smelly boy, so you killed my brother. Do you know who I am? The strong man in the lead glared at Taifeng, holding the axe in his hand. I don't know, I'm not interested in knowing. The smile on Taifeng's face gradually disappeared, and he responded faintly. Humph, you better wait to die. Our eldest sister is coming soon. The leading brawny seemed reckless, but he just kept provoking and didn't make any outrageous actions. Noisy. Yu Taifeng yelled, and directly drew out his sword and volleyed it out. Under Reiatsu's blessing, several invisible sword auras passed through everyone's bodies in an instant, turning them into corpses in an instant. The movement here just now has already attracted countless onlookers. They hadn't figured out the situation yet, only saw the young man drew his sword, and then this bloody and cruel scene appeared. Gosh, what's happening here? He is the devil. Quote. Yu Taifeng ignored the weak souls. After putting away his sword, he quickly walked towards the junction of Zaraki District and Kalu District. There is a gambling shop at the junction of these two areas. According to Yu Taifeng's memory, there will be several battles from time to time. His purpose is not to go to the casino to gamble, but to use the murderers around the casino to test his kendo level. Although, he just used one move to kill dozens of provocateurs in seconds. However, this is much worse than what he expected in his heart. After all, the strength level of the weak chickens just now is just a little stronger than the ordinary Liuhun. Yu Taifeng walked unhurriedly like this, and all the souls who knew him wherever they went, all consciously stepped aside. For fear of touching his brows, causing an unsuspecting disaster. Yu Taifeng felt helpless in response to the reactions of many passers-by. Although he had personally beheaded hundreds of murderers during the year he had obtained the system. However, he knew very well in his own heart that all those who died in his hands were horrendous people. When Yu Taifeng was about to reach his destination, a burst of murderous Reiatsu came from behind him. He subconsciously pulled out the saber around his waist and quickly turned around to block the attack from behind. At this time, a face that made him feel a little familiar appeared before his eyes. A young woman wearing white linen and long black hair was looking at him with a fanatical look in her swords in both hands. Yu Taifeng looked at the young woman who launched a surprise attack on him, with doubts in his eyes. Although she only wore the cheapest linen, her tall and elegant figure set off in white linen, which made people feel enviable. However, the saber clasped in the woman's hand and her seemingly weak appearance formed a distinct response at this moment. It is like a white tulip with barbs growing on the branches and leaves. Although you killed that bunch of trash, you have to admit that you are really strong. The woman muttered to Yu Taifeng while looking at him with more fanatical eyes. At this moment, Yu Taifeng had a faint feeling. That is, he now seems to be the prey in the eyes of hunters. After a brief surprise, Yu Taifeng couldn't help but chuckle and said to the woman, unexpectedly, I would meet you. Do you even know me? After hearing Yu Taifeng's words, the woman asked unexpectedly. In so many districts of Rukongai, the most reputed evil person, Ms. Ujihua, how could I not know you? Yu Taifeng's face was as calm as water, and he replied faintly. Chapter 5 Yu Taifeng vs Maojihua, seeking evaluation of collection of flowers. After hearing Yu Taifeng's words, Wu Zihua was slightly shocked. Although she knew very well in her heart, what she had done had already been ridiculous. However, the young man not far away not only completely ignored his fierce name, but was also able to react immediately and resist his own attack. This also made her have to look at the faintly mysterious teenager in front of her. Yu Taifeng was also a little surprised after reacting to the attack at the first time. Because he never thought that he would encounter Mao Zihua in this situation. At this moment, all kinds of information about Mao Zihua also came to Yu Taifeng's mind. As the very popular Unohana in Shinigami's original novel, he was already the captain of the 4th Division of Goni 13th Division when he appeared on the stage. In the original work, she always gives people a feeling of spring breeze, as if she is like the big sister next door. Coupled with the 4th Division under her leadership, she is in charge of medical affairs full-time, so she always feels not very powerful. However, Yu Taifeng was an anime fan before crossing, and he knew very well how terrifying Ujihua was. Before joining the Gote 13th Division, Ujihua was one of the most wicked people in the entire Soul Society. She is not only ruthless, but also a paranoid fighting madman. Boasting to master all the genres and sword styles in the world, Mao Zihua named herself Yaqianliu. Later, she lost to each other in the battle with Yamamoto Genryūsai. After joining the original Goni 13th Division, she successfully became the first generation Kenpachi of the 11th Division and was renamed Unohana Retsu. As the first generation Kenpachi, she learned Kido from Kailan Temple Tenshiro. She thinks that in this way, she can enjoy the fun of fighting more. In the name of fighting against Rukongai's murderers, she went to Rukongai to find opponents and fighters that she liked. After accidentally encountering Zaraki Kenpachi in his youth, he was accidentally stabbed in the bones of Hungary. Because Zaraki Kenpachi sealed his power to the limit in pursuit of the fun of fighting, he was defeated by Unohana Retsu. In this battle, Unohana Retsu was stabbed below the throat and above the Hungarian bone. When she became the captain of the 4th Division, she covered her previous scars with braided braids, and her personality seemed to become gentler. In Shinigami's final 1,000-year bloody battle, in order to inspire Zaraki Kenpachi's abilities, and on the grounds that two, Kenpachi, could not appear in the same era, Unohana deliberately let the other party stab her own scar and died. Read more at mtlarchive.com. Yu Taifeng looked at Mao Zihua not far away, and scanned the data in his memory one by one. Based on these data, he can undoubtedly draw a conclusion. That is, Unohana is definitely one of the top combat powers in the Shinigami world. However, according to the current timeline, Ujihua isn't too threatening. Just as Yu Taifeng was comparing her strengths in her heart, she saw Zihua had already started to move preemptively. Come on for a pleasant battle. Unohana yelled, and took the lead to kill. Although Yu Taifeng's previously envisioned plan was broken by Ujiha, he couldn't help but become more serious in the face of a strong opponent. After a few rounds of tentative moves, Ujiha is like a fighter machine without any emotions, becoming more and more excited. A burst of crisp weapon collisions echoed in the sky above this area. Obviously, Unohana is already in a state. Not only did she release all Reiatsu with all her strength, she also waved her saber again and again, attacking Yu Taifeng from various tricky angles. Yu Taifeng, who was attacked, turned on the Omniscience and Omnipotence, and at the same time he used his sword to defuse the opponent's offensive again and again. The collision between the weapon and Reiatsu brought up a cloud of dust, and the onlookers who had just started watching the excitement had to scatter and hide. After all, no one wants to be the dead soul in the aftermath of this war. Time and time again, Unohana poured all of Reiatsu into the sword in her hand, changing the way she attacked from time to time. Our chop, our pick, our stab. On the surface, the seemingly calm flower of Maozihua has already set off a storm in his heart at this moment. She would never have thought that the seemingly weak young man in front of her could cleverly resolve her fierce offensive again and again. Thinking of this, Uozihua couldn't help but increase the strength in her hand a bit. However, when she gradually increased the Reiatsu and strength that had been poured into the sword again and again, she was even more shocked. Because she has only discovered now that no matter what swordsmanship she uses, the opponent can easily resolve it. What made her even more unbearable was that the young man in front of her looked completely at ease, and she couldn't see the slightest panic and nervousness. The fierce Unohana couldn't figure out how the other party did this. Even if he is said to be the extremely evil person, even when facing a powerful enemy, he will feel a sense of horror. The reason why she was able to exercise her swordsmanship skills and Reiatsu to the present level also depends on temporary epiphanies in the fierce actual combat time and time again, and summing up after the battle. Of course, Yu Taifeng didn't know what Maozihua felt in her heart, because as early as the beginning of the battle, he had turned on Omniscience and Omnipotence, and he had already seen through all the opponent's offensive. Ujihua's seemingly vicious sword skills are undoubtedly like a white mouse testing his understanding of kendo to him. Every round of her offensive, every sword skill she uses, and even every sword swing. For Yu Taifeng, it is like an experience potion to increase his kendo experience. Ujiha continued his fierce offensive round after round, and Yu Taifeng was able to resolve it casually like this. But the area where they fought is not as simple as imagined. Due to the strong Reiatsu released again and again, and the sword energy poured into the sword body, the surrounding buildings have been collapsed and damaged in varying degrees. The wooden house seemed to be paper paste, and under the impact of Reiatsu and Jianqi time after time, it had already turned into countless tattered wooden boards. The sandy ground has already raised countless dusts because of the fighting between the two. The area of several hundred meters centered on these two people is like being blown by a violent typhoon. At this moment, Rao Yuzhua, who was a fighting mad, couldn't help but began to gasp heavily. Because all the sword skills she learned and comprehended had already been used up in the battle just now. Yu Taifeng smiled and looked at Maozihua not far away. He shook his head helplessly and chuckled. Are you sure you want to fight? Asterisk. Chapter 6 The Direction of Swordsmanship Breakthrough, Seeking Collection of Flowers Evaluation. After hearing Yu Taifeng's words, Yu Zihua couldn't help but become more solemn. She couldn't figure out how the seemingly weak young man in front of her could be evenly matched with what she was inextricably matched. Ujihua was very clear in her heart how strong she was. As a fighting freak, she truly regarded the other party as a respectable opponent at this moment. Girl Ujihua, I have a suggestion. I wonder if you are interested in listening. Yu Taifeng still looks relaxed, looking at Ujihua with a smile and said. Just say anything, don't delay my enjoyment of fighting. Ujihua quickly adjusted her mood and returned to her original cold appearance. Yu Taifeng put the saber in his hand into his waist, and said, since we can't help each other, let's stop here for today. After all, we all need to continue to practice, so as to be qualified to be opponents of the other side. What do you think? Quote. Although Ujihua still wants to continue the fight, after the inextricable battle just now, she also has a lot of enlightenment. Naturally, she also feels that Yu Taifeng's words are somewhat reasonable. The next time I am looking for you, it will be when I really beat you. Ujihua looked at Yu Taifeng with a serious face, and turned around and left after leaving a word. Yu Taifeng shook his head helplessly, then turned and walked towards his residence. The first confrontation between the two came to an end like this, leaving only a messy battle scene. After Yu Taifeng returned to his residence, he began to think about the gains of the battle while summarizing the results. For this battle with Ujihua, he was very clear about his shortcomings. If it weren't for the all-knowing and omnipotent relationship, it was possible that he would be defeated by the opponent shortly after the battle. When Yu Taifeng first started fighting with Ujihua, he turned on omniscience and omnipotence. The reason why he did this is not just to see through the holes and trajectories in the opponent's sword skills to prevent himself from overturning. What's more important is to learn and research Ujihua's sword skills while fighting the opponent. Although the current Unohana is not strong enough, whether it is the future Unohana Yakiryu or Unohana Retsu, it means that she has a strong kendo talent and fighting skills. This is exactly what makes Yu Taifeng feel fortunate. After all, having such an opponent with infinite potential and a guinea pig can kill two birds with one stone. Although Yu Taifeng is not a good person, he is definitely not a bloodthirsty person. His current goal is very clear, and that is to use omniscience and omnipotence to learn the fighting skills and abilities of other powerhouses. The appearance of Ujiha undoubtedly saved him a lot of trouble, and he didn't want to fight and kill those slightly stronger stray souls every day. Not only is it difficult to improve his strength in that way, but it is purely a waste of his precious time. Read more at mtlarchive.com. Although Yu Taifeng's current strength is still very weak, he aspires to become the strongest in the world, and now he has a different state of mind. After recalling the process of the battle in his mind for a while, he began to use Omniscience and Omnipotence to analyze and compare the battle scenes in his mind. After about an hour, Yu Taifeng has thoroughly mastered the various skills learned during this battle. Now, he is about to begin his first sword skill development in a true sense. Before crossing, Yu Taifeng liked to watch some anime and novels very much. At that time, he had always dreamed that he could be like all kinds of protagonists, possessing the ability to understand the whole world. Among them, whether it is the internet novels of the Tian dynasty or the animation of the Neon Country, there are many protagonists who use swords. Of course, what impressed him the most was the sword repairmen who were able to fly with swords in the Tianqiao internet novels. However, after crossing into the Shinigami world, it is undoubtedly a fantasy to become a swordsman. After all, this is completely incomparable with the Shinigami world. According to Yu Taifeng's understanding, although the power system in Shinigami's world is a bit complicated, in the final analysis, it still uses Reiatsu to fight. Whether it is swordsmanship, white hits, shunpo, Kido, and other combat skills, they can actually be understood as skills. As for the omniscience and omnipotence, the power of a word, the power of Hogyoku and even the moonless power later used by Kurosaki Ichigo, they are just special skills that are more powerful or practical. However, in the Shinigami world, no matter what skill you use, you must refer to the user's Reiatsu level more or less, and use this to determine the power of the skill or its role. If you want to truly exert the maximum power of various skills, and even exceed the upper limit of the original skill's power, it can be solved not only by having a super Reiatsu. Therefore, using the least amount of Reiatsu to maximize the power of various skills, and even without the help of Reiatsu, using various skills is the ultimate goal Yu Taifeng is currently pursuing. Yu Taifeng, who has been in the world of Shinigami for more than 3 years, has obtained the maximum Reiatsu that can be obtained in the 1 year or so since acquiring the system. He also found a problem, that is, even if he kills more powerful Lixin, it is difficult to get anything useful from the dropped box. After inquiring about the system before, he knew that he could only kill opponents with the same or higher level of Reiatsu as his own. Only in the dropped box can loot of the corresponding level be picked up. Even if you kill enemies weaker than yourself, Reiatsu with a value of 1 will be forced to drop. But there is really no need to do that. Now only the strong can make Yu Taifeng interested. Yu Taifeng, who had already formulated a plan to improve his strength, after digesting the combat experience not long ago, picked up the saber on the side and walked to the backyard, and began to try again and again. I saw that he completely suppressed Reiatsu in his body, relying only on the power of the flesh, and wielding the sword in his hand tirelessly. Swish, swish, swish. The iron sword that Yu Taifeng wields in his hand changes its trajectory back and forth according to a special rhythm. The sound of the collision between the blade and the steel continued to echo in the backyard. It seems that it is really difficult to cut steel with physical strength alone, but it should be possible. Continue. After thinking about it for a while, Yu Taifeng re-entered the state of selflessness just now. A week later, in the backyard of Yu Taifeng's residence, the clash of sword blades and steel continued. However, the iron block leaning on the rock pile is just a lot of shallow scratches. Yu Taifeng looked at the iron sword with countless gaps in his hand because of practicing sword skills, and couldn't help but fall into contemplation. At this moment, he suddenly thought of a theory in a certain anime he had watched. Everything has breath, whether it's a living thing such as a living thing, or a dead thing such as steel or stone. As long as you can feel the breath of all things, find the flaw in it, and swing a sword by surprise, you can cut it off. The sword that cuts iron like mud may really exist, but if you can master the breathing laws of all things, then even a wooden sword can cut everything. Although Yu Taifeng still doesn't know whether this theory can be applied to the Shinigami world, at least it must be tried first. Thinking of this, Yu Taifeng couldn't help becoming excited. He directly turned on, all-knowing and almighty, and began to stare at the iron block in front of him to observe carefully. Asterisk. Chapter 7 Comprehend Sword Skills, The Realm of Cutting Iron. Seeking Collection of Flowers Evaluation. After turning on, all-knowing almighty, Yu Taifeng carefully observed the iron block not far away. At this time, he had slowly settled down, and with the help of omniscience and omnipotence, he began to feel the surrounding environment with his heart. At this time, Yu Taifeng may not have noticed that he has actually entered a state of almost selflessness. The breeze gently brushed his cheeks, and the noisy environment outside the backyard wall and Yu Taifeng, who had been silent in his sentiment, formed a clear response to this. Countless subtle souls are like air, flooding every corner. The mottled walls that have been in disrepair, the gravel ground where the dust has settled, the messy piles of rocks that have been baptized by the years. Yu Taifeng only felt that the place he had lived in for several years had become a little strange for the first time. This unprecedented feeling of enlightenment made him fall into it and couldn't extricate himself from it. Under the analysis of all-knowing and all-powerful, even a dusty grain of dust has become a little different at this moment. Yu Taifeng was so silent in the world of sentiment, slowly experiencing everything around him, and began to work hard to understand what their deepest essence is. At this moment, the iron sword he had been holding for a long time in his hand gave him a familiar but unfamiliar feeling. The surrounding Link Sea moved in a peculiar trajectory, and he seemed to feel the origin of the iron sword in his hand at this moment. The countless iron-attributed spirits and carbon-attributed spirits are arranged in an orderly manner, as if according to a certain formula. The spirits of these two attributes are different from the free spirits floating in the air, but more like they have been specially modified. Everything has an aura. It seems that everything in the Shinigami world is closely related to the souls of various attributes. Yu Taifeng secretly said in his heart. With the help of all-knowing Almighty, Yu Taifeng has thoroughly understood the origin of the iron sword in his hand. At this time, he found some details that were not easy to detect. The two spirit sons of the iron sword in his own hands unexpectedly began to undergo subtle changes all the time. Although this change will not have any impact on the iron sword itself, the two spirits are like warriors resisting foreign enemies. Is this subtle change? Read more at mtlarchive.com. The iron spirit and carbon spirit that make up the iron sword, in order to resist the devouring of the time spirit and the corrosive spirit, they have made a mechanism similar to self-protection. So it is. After a period of hard thinking and meditation, Yu Taifeng finally saw the origin of the iron sword. At this moment, Rao Shi's Xingxing was already very calm, and he couldn't help but become agitated. I get it, Yu Taifeng exclaimed happily. Suddenly, Yu Taifeng, who was enlightened, directly grasped the handmade iron sword and came to the front of the iron block beside the stone pile. Without any hesitation, he directly swung the iron sword in his hand and slashed at the iron block leaning on the rock pile. Crack! The original seemingly heavy piece of iron was directly split into two pieces by the iron sword in the sound of a metal collision. Upon seeing this scene, Yu Taifeng swung his sword again with joy. Amidst the clank of metal, the iron pieces that had just been cut into two pieces by the iron sword were directly broken down into dozens of pieces of different sizes at this moment. It's done. Yu Taifeng looked at the scattered iron pieces and pieces on the ground, finally showing a satisfied smile. Feel the breath of all things, that's what I meant. Everything is alive. Every substance in the Shinigami world is composed of spirits with different attributes. Spirits of various attributes, arranged according to the corresponding combination, will eventually be formed into some nihilistic or materialized matter. Any substance or thing is inherently resistant to those who try to obliterate them. Regardless of whether it is an iron sword or an iron block, although the spirits that belong to the structure are not the same, the spirits that make up them all have the same goal. The reason why Yu Taifeng was able to cut the iron piece smoothly was only based on the analysis of all-knowing and omnipotent, and found the spirit of the iron piece to resist. Because as long as it is iron, it will rust. Yu Taifeng's current strength, although still not enough to master the power of controlling the time spirit. However, as long as he can use the carrier to induce a part of the time spirit and the power to corrupt the spirit. With the help of the two original spirits in the iron block, resist time and corrode the voids of the spirits. Surprisingly attacked its deficiencies, and directly attack the flaws in the inner spirit of the iron block. And cut it off as soon as you find the flaw, it's not too simple. In order to confirm his conjecture, Yu Taifeng went directly to the big tree in the backyard, broke off a branch at random and held it in his left hand. Swish! Yu Taifeng slammed a branch with his left hand and hit the iron sword in his right hand directly. Crack! After a crisp sound, the iron sword struck by the tree branch broke into two pieces. If anyone sees this amazing scene, he will definitely exclaim. Because this kind of thing has exceeded the public's cognition. At this moment, Yu Taifeng can even affirm that he has embarked on a path that has never been seen before. He had fully understood the realm of iron slashing, and now he also needed to start striding towards a new goal. But before that, Yu Taifeng had to go to the weapon shop first. Because his saber has been completely scrapped due to the development of sword skills this time, it is time to find a new saber for himself. Asterisk. Chapter 8 True and False Sealed State, Seeking Evaluation of the Collection of Flowers. Yu Taifeng, who mastered the realm of slashing iron, was in a good mood. He didn't have too much delay along the way and went straight to the largest black market in Zaraki district. Come here, take a look. The newly arrived Reiatsu secret technique is cheap. The White Hits performance has started, and everyone who likes it will come to join us. Imitation Sealed State is on sale at a low price. Each one is a must-have product for home travel and self-defense. The smuggled gunpowder is cheap to deal with, and there are even more dangerous and amazing finished fire mines. Let's take a look. Quote. Yu Taifeng, who has been here many times, couldn't help but fall into contemplation as he watched the merchants yelling at the stalls on both sides of the road. Because the things sold on this black market are not only diverse, but these merchants even dared to sell them loudly, completely undaunted. After thinking for a while, Yu Taifeng was also relieved. Although in his opinion, the power of these merchants can only be regarded as a strong wandering soul at best. However, since they can get those messy things, they must also have their own unknown channels. After all, no one can guarantee what kind of power is behind which businessman. Therefore, this black market is not only extremely lively, but also has the shadow of various forces in Seraiti. While walking through the black market casually, Yu Taifeng focused all his attention on the various merchants selling weapons. At this time, a young man with black curly hair caught his attention. Yo. Sealed state. The real sealed state. The black curly-haired man put on a cynical look, looking at the businessmen around him, yelling in a learned manner. But from his appearance, it is obvious that he is not a vendor who often comes to this black market. After hearing the curly-haired man screaming, various passers-by would stay in front of his stall for a few seconds, and then turned away with disdain. Hey, I am really sealed state. What kind of expression do you guys look like? Hey. Although the curly-haired man was trying his best to sell, but when he saw that there were more or less potential buyers gathered in front of the stalls around him, the whole person became a little anxious. Not far away, a boss selling weapons, after taking a look at the curly-haired man who was still yelling, he said loudly to the buyer in front of his booth with a look of disdain, "I don't know how high in the earth is. I dare to say that he sells genuine goods at a fair price. Sealed state. I have lived in Zaraki district for more than 30 years, and this is the first time I have seen such a big talker. Right, looking at that guy's unreliable look, he looks like a liar. Let him shout, the louder he shouts, the faster he will suffer. Those Shinigami in Seraiti are not vegetarian. After he was caught by those Shinigami for questioning, he would understand what misfortune came out of his mouth. Ha ha ha. Quote. All kinds of passers-by spoke loudly to mock the curly-haired man, and some even laughed loudly with an attitude of watching the excitement. Read more at mtlarchive.com. Just as a group of passers-by talked about each other, Yu Taifeng stepped towards the direction of the curly-haired man. After seeing Yu Taifeng, the crowd of onlookers who were shouting loudly showed shocked expressions, then quickly closed their eyes and dispersed. Go, don't touch that murderous mold. Brother, stay away with me. That curly boss is going to be unlucky now. Quote. Yu Taifeng saw the performance of passers-by. Although he felt helpless, there was no way. After all, in the more than a year since acquiring the system, he has indeed solved hundreds of murderers with his own hands. At first, some small organizations dared to challenge him. But with the passage of time, more and more murderers died in his hands. In Zaraki district and several nearby districts, there is also a legend of young killer god. Oh hello. Don't go. I am a sealed state. If you don't believe me, try it. The curly-haired man looked at the onlookers who had left with a dazed expression, and reluctantly opened his mouth to stay. However, he found that no matter how he recruited customers, no one dared to approach here. At this moment, he curled his lips helplessly, and squatted directly on the ground to meditate. Boss, can you let me see this sealed state? The curly-haired man who was thinking about life with his head down, after hearing this voice, he curiously raised his head and looked at it. I saw a young man squatting in front of his stall, looking curiously. Besides Yu Taifeng, who else can come here? At this moment, he was squatting on the ground and looking at the sealed state on the floor with concentrated eyes. The curly-haired man hurriedly sorted out his expressions and introduced happily. Little brother, are you interested in a genuine sealed state? Can you let me see the sealed state? Yu Taifeng didn't answer the other party's question directly, but asked calmly. Yes. Look at it. These are real treasures. The curly-haired man quickly introduced it as he saw a customer. Yu Taifeng picked up one of the sealed state, and then directly observed it with omniscience and omnipotence. At this time, while using omniscience and omnipotence for analysis, he used the breathing of all things method that he had just realized not long ago. The curly-haired man looked at the seemingly pretending young man before him, and asked somewhat proudly, how about? Little brother, my babes are good, aren't they? A few minutes later, Yu Taifeng directly raised his head and said casually, I want this sealed state. Let's make a price. The curly-haired man would never have thought that the other party would be so simple. He asked in a tentative tone, Little brother, are you sure you want this sealed state? Are you not afraid that this is an imitation? You only need to make a price. As for whether it is a fake or not, I have my own judgment. Yu Taifeng replied simply. When the curly-haired man heard his words, a playful expression flashed across his face, but he quickly returned to his carefree appearance. At this time, he felt like he was different from just now. He looked at Yu Taifeng with a smile, and said, since you really want it, then come up with something that will satisfy me in exchange, otherwise. Something that satisfies you. After hearing the strange condition of the curly-haired man, Yu Taifeng did not show any surprise. Now he has begun to think about what should be exchanged with the other party. After a quick thought, Yu Taifeng put down the sealed state in his hand, turned around and left. Hey, don't go. The curly-haired man would never have imagined that a teenager who had just been interested in the things he was selling would suddenly leave. This Rukongai doesn't seem to be as fun as in the legend. The curly-haired man shook his head helplessly, as if he had made some decision, and slowly began to tidy up. Just as he was about to pack up the goods, Yu Taifeng, who had just left, appeared in front of him again. Chapter 9 Branches and the God of Swords. Please evaluate the collection of flowers. The curly-haired man who was about to settle and leave, couldn't help showing a surprised expression after seeing Yu Taifeng reappearing. But the astonishment on his face flashed in an instant, replaced by a look of curiosity. Because of the re-emergence of Yu Taifeng, a brand new iron sword and a branch were pinned to his waist. The curly-haired man was a little puzzled, looking at Yu Taifeng who was walking towards him again, wondering what kind of medicine was sold in the other's gourd. Little brother, what are you doing? It seems that you have bought what you want from others, right? The curly-haired man was also very straightforward, and directly said what he wanted in his heart. I'm here to get the sealed state just now. Yu Taifeng said calmly. After hearing Yu Taifeng's words, the curly-haired man looked at him up and down again, then chuckled and said, "You don't want to use the scrap iron pin to your waist to exchange it with me, do you?" Quote. "No, little brother, I'm very busy. I don't have time to play games with you here." The curly-haired man shook his head helplessly, and continued to tidy up. "I used this branch in exchange for you." Quote question mark question mark question mark quote. When the curly-haired man heard Yu Taifeng's words, his face blushed and white, and then he directly supported his forehead with his right hand. "Little brother, stop teasing. Do you really take me as a fool?" Yu Taifeng was not angry because of the other party's words. He directly drew out the iron sword on his waist with his left hand, and swung the branch in his right hand to the iron sword in his left hand. Crack! A crisp sound was heard from the sword, and then the iron sword in Yu Taifeng's hand was directly broken in two. Hi! After seeing this scene, the curly-haired man couldn't help taking a breath. At this moment, he looked at the broken sword that fell on the ground with an incredible look. This is impossible. While talking to himself, the curly-haired man stepped up to Yu Taifeng. He squatted down quickly and picked up the broken sword, looking at it with a puzzled look. After half a minute, the curly-haired man repeatedly confirmed that the broken sword in his hand was a genuine thing, and the expression on his face was not to mention how wonderful. "Is it all right now?" Yu Taifeng looked at the curly-haired man with a smile, and said. "The Spirit King is here. What kind of strange thing is this branch? You can just take it back and study it slowly," Yu Taifeng reminded. Yes, I want to go back and study it slowly." "Correct. This is the sealed state you want. Brother, you can't go back. This branch is now mine. Read more at mtlarchive.com. The curly-haired man hurriedly pulled out a sealed state from the parcel on the ground, and snatched the branch from Yu Taifeng's hands. After completing this series of actions, he directly turned around and appeared 10 meters away instantly. And with a terrifying speed, quickly disappeared into Yu Taifeng's sight. The scene that took place here was seen by onlookers not far away. The branches in Yu Taifeng's hands had already stunned them. But now, when they saw the careless curly-haired man who was able to move instantaneously, they began to wonder if they were dazzled. Shunpo. It's Shunpo. My god, a middle-aged man who was dressed a little bit higher exclaimed. Shunpo. What is Shunpo? A vendor who was also an onlooker asked with a dazed expression. Shunpo. That can only be done by advanced Shinigami. My god. The middle-aged man looked at the direction the curly-haired man was leaving, feeling scared for a while. When the onlookers heard the word Shinigami, they all showed unbelievable expressions. The middle-aged man who had just been popularizing science for many onlookers, thought of the scene just now, and at this time, he was also afraid. Because his younger brother is also a Shinigami. He can live a good life by selling some items that flow out of Seraiti as he is now. The most important reason for this is his brother's help behind the scenes. He knows better than anyone else in his heart what Shinigami means to ordinary wandering souls living on Rukongai. Although his younger brother is only a Shinigami of the lowest level, it also makes him rise in the Rukongai of life. I will visit my younger brother every other time, and I will always tell him about various things in Seraiti. It was not long ago that he heard about Shinigami-related things like Zonquan Gogi. The stronger Shinigami, the farther you can use Shunpo. At this moment, the middle-aged man's mind kept echoing his brother's words. After being overwhelmed for a while, the middle-aged man has no more leisure time to stay in the black market. Because as one of the onlookers, he made some cynicism just now. He hurriedly left this place of right and wrong, for fear that the man with curly hair just appeared again. Wrong. It should be said that it is curly hair Shinigami. Yu Taifeng looked at the sealed state that had been strongly bought and sold, with a smug smile on his face. After pinning the sealed state to his waist, he quickly turned and left the black market. After all, the branch that was taken away by the other party just now only saw ordinary branches. As for the sealed state I got, it is a real sealed state. Because Yu Taifeng never thought that he would meet acquaintances here. He quickly turned around and walked towards his residence, while beginning to recall the message of the curly-haired man. The curly-haired man who just bartered with himself is not a small person. Because he is the famous sword god in the Shinigami world Namaya Wangyu. Yu Taifeng, who is very familiar with Shinigami's original work, has a lot of knowledge about this sword god. Who is Ermewu Wangyu? He is the inventor of Zanpakuto, and he is also a low-key strong man. The mysterious Wangyu is not just as simple as it seems on the surface. He is not only one of the 5 captains of the Zero Division, but also the creator of all sealed states. You know, if you want to become the captain of the Zero Division, you need to contribute to the history of Soul Society. Namaya Wangyu is called the god of swords precisely because he invented Zanpakuto. Zanpakuto, as the most important battle item of the Shinigami power system in the Shinigami world, is as important as you can imagine. In Shinigami's original Millennium Blood War chapter, Nigaya Wangyu is the god of swordsmen. Not only helped Kurosaki Ichigo and Abarai Renji to reforge Zanpakuto, but in the final battle of the Spirit Palace, they killed 4 members of the Star Cross Knights with 1 enemy and 4. Yu Taifeng can even be sure that if there is no Namaya Wangyu, then there will be no Shinigami. Since the last time I met Mao Zihua, Yu Taifeng sighed in his heart. This time, he never dreamed that he not only met Ermewu Wangyu, but also sturdily pitted him. Thinking of this, Yu Taifeng, who has a calm personality, almost laughed out of a pig cry. I don't know what kind of expression will Tangtang's sword god look like after discovering that the cut branches are just ordinary branches. Yu Taifeng thought to himself. Asterisk. Chapter 10 The Essence of Sealed State and the Daunting God of Swords Seeking Collection of Flowers Evaluation. Because of his own round of Sao operations, Yu Taifeng, who took a big advantage, is in a good mood at the moment. After returning to his residence, he was already a little impatient. Now that we have got our own sealed state, now it has become the most important thing to study sealed state with the convenience of omniscience and omnipotence. Yu Taifeng sat cross-legged casually on the ground, placed the sealed state on his lap and began to study. After turning on the omniscience and omnipotence, he felt the fluctuations of the spirits around him while stroking the blade of the sealed state with his hand. After a while, Yu Taifeng entered a state of sentiment. Under the analysis of omniscience and omnipotence, the spiritual composition of the sealed state was also presented before his eyes. The more in-depth Yu Taifeng analyzed and understood, the more surprised he was. Because at this time, he has thoroughly seen the origin of the sealed state. I saw in the slender sword body, this sealed state contained countless frightening powers. Yu Taifeng tried to mobilize the souls around him to resonate with the sealed state, but after several attempts, he finally gave up. Because he discovered an extremely important problem, that is, the reiatsu in his body is not enough to resonate with the sealed state in his hand. In other words, he can't do shikai at this moment. However, this initial attempt was not without any gains. At the very least, Yu Taifeng can draw two conclusions with great certainty. With the help of omniscience and omnipotence, he has discovered that the essence of the sealed state spirit child turned out to be evolution. Although the sealed state is only the prototype of Zanpakuto, their final form must be Zanpakuto with different attributes. Whether it is better than Ryujin Jaka of Yamamoto Genryūsai, Kyoka Suigetsu of Aizen, or Zanjetsu of Kurosaki Ichigo. Each Zanpakuto's inner soul is developing in a different direction because of the owner's character and heart. It is no wonder that every Shinigami who can awaken the sealed state will have Zanpakuto with different attributes. If the Shinigami holding Zanpakuto are compared to the words of the creator. So whether it's sealed state or Zanpakuto, they are both a world transformed by the creators with Reiatsu as the medium. As for what the creator likes, or what their original minds are like, this is unclear. 1,000 people have 1,000 faces. After the sealed state that was given its name became Zanpakuto, it was naturally not exactly the same as Shinigami's combat tool. Read more at mtlarchive.com. Blindly conducting research is indeed too restrictive. I still have to improve my Reiatsu level as soon as possible. Yu Taifeng said secretly in his heart. Relying on the law of all things breathing, research not long ago, Yu Taifeng also discovered one, which currently leaves him with some helpless conclusions. That is, although sealed state can have self-conscious breathing, he has not been able to discover the flaws in it at present. After a period of thinking and analysis, Yu Taifeng is not paranoid to draw any definite conclusions. Because he is also very clear in his heart that if he can see through the sealed state or Zanpakuto flaws, then directly cut off the opponent's Zanpakuto in the battle, how else can others play? At this moment, Yu Taifeng couldn't help but admire Ermaya Wangyu as the sword god, from the bottom of his heart. After all, every sealed state in Shinigami's world is forged by him. Although Yu Taifeng didn't know at this moment, whether the sealed state created by Wang Yu was his own work, or he relied on the help of some media. However, this is enough to make people respect. Even though Yu Taifeng has already looked away, it does not mean that he has no desire to pursue the ultimate. It seems that there will be a chance in the future, and you have to consult the sword god. Thinking about it now, he should have found himself fooled by me, right? Quote. As Yu Taifeng thought in his heart, he once again recalled the excitement of the sword god, picking up the treasure, not long ago. Thinking of this, he also smiled awkwardly. At this moment, in the Phoenix Palace, in the Seraiti Zero Division resident. Ermewu Wang Yu, with curly hair, was looking at the broken branch in his hand with a dazed expression. How can this be? Now he has a feeling of crying without tears. Because he found that he was actually pitted. Don't let those four guys know about this. Otherwise, as the dignified sword god, I will definitely be laughed at by them. Wang Yu said inwardly. It shouldn't be. How did that brat do it? I cut off the iron sword with a branch. If I say it, no one will believe it, right? The problem is, I checked the truncated iron sword. Although an iron sword of that level is just dull scrap iron, it is also an iron sword anyway. Even the sharp branches, it is impossible to cut the steel. His Reiatsu level is at best the most ordinary Shinigami player. How can it be done easily? How about cutting off the iron sword with a branch? And when he was swinging the sword, I didn't feel Reiatsu's leak. Then how terrifying is his physical power? Even Yamamoto guy, I am afraid it is difficult to use pure power. Ermewu Wang Yu couldn't help but fall into deep contemplation at this time. The boy not long ago was like a mystery now, so he couldn't understand it. He now has a very strong instinct. That was the seemingly harmless young man, and he probably mastered something amazing. You must find a way to find him, and ask carefully. Wang Yu said to himself. After studying the sealed state just obtained, Yu Taifeng began to realize the method of breathing of all things, in the backyard. Just as he was silent in his sentiment, a clear and sweet voice came into his ears from outside the wall of the backyard. Chapter 11 Broken Sword, Seeking Collection of Flowers Evaluation. Uchiha had a deep understanding in the last match, and after leaving, she summarized herself in the first place. Aspiring to become the strongest swordsman in Rukongai, Uchiha has an almost crazy paranoia about fighting. In her opinion, only constant fighting can break through her limits and break the shackles bound to her. This is also the main reason why she did not hesitate to kill countless opponents with her own hands and tried to use her blood to forge her own fame. The flower of Mao who first came to Rukongai is actually just one of Rukongai's many weak people. Because of an accident, she unexpectedly discovered that she could practice cultivation. After being oppressed all the year round, after killing the enemy by herself for the first time, she unexpectedly fell in love with the frightening feeling in the battle. Every killing and battle made her feel satisfied from the bottom of her heart. In the killing again and again, she slowly became a murderer. With the passage of time, she almost forgot her name. Anyone who has heard of her brilliant deeds will call her the most evil person. However, a few days ago, the mysterious young man who was inextricably beaten with her used the term Uchiha girl to call her. Reminiscent of the other side's face when fighting, Uchiha couldn't get angry. Because she can clearly feel that the opponent's Reiatsu level is far inferior to her own. In this world of Reiatsu is king, Unohana is the first time he has met Reiatsu, a character who is far behind her, but can even share her role in battle. Whether it's the calmness of the opponent in the battle, or his weird skills that can easily diffuse his offensive every time, Uchiha-ji is excited. After meditation, Uchiha can only attribute the reason for its resolution of the offensive to accident. However, the current Uchiha is not a believable man. She decided that she must use the other party's blood to wash away the shame of her failure. After several days of experience and a few deliberate killings, Uchiha once again created a new sword in the battle. Uchiha came prepared, but she has enough confidence to completely defeat that boy. After all, now, only battle and blood can satisfy her. Utilizing her famous, cruel name, and some special contacts, Uchiha quickly found the boy's residence without spending much effort. This time, she didn't believe that the other party's luck would be so good. At this time, Uchiha came to a dilapidated courtyard alone. After feeling the looming weakness of Reiatsu on the opponent, Uchiha is already very sure that it must be luck for the opponent to tie her. She unreservedly released all Reiatsu in her body in an attempt to give the other side a slap in the face. However, what made her a little helpless was that her powerful Reiatsu didn't seem to shock her. The tiny Reiatsu in the wall, although like a gurgling stream, was calmly unaffected. I already feel your faint Reiatsu. I said, I will defeat you by myself. Imagine you are covered in blood, that's wonderful. Quote. While yelling loudly, Uchiha showed an expression of excitement on her face. Read more at mtlarchive.com. Although Yu Taifeng had a certain degree of psychological preparation, he never thought that Uchiha, who was still battle mad, at this time, would appear so soon. Seeing that he couldn't realize it quietly now, he didn't get angry because of the other party's recklessness. Instead, he unhurriedly opened the small door in the backyard, and walked out with the sealed state just obtained in his hand. It turned out to be Uchiha girl, I didn't expect you to come here so soon. Yu Taifeng said while looking at Uchiha with a smile. Stop talking nonsense. Last time you escaped, this time you are not so lucky. Take it to death. Quote. Uchiha didn't have time to prepare Yu Taifeng. A weird smile flashed on her originally calm face, and she suddenly attacked her with a sword. Hey, can you be ladies? And what does your expression mean? Quote. Yu Taifeng also didn't expect that the other party would suddenly get into trouble. He turned on, all-knowing almighty, to predict the trajectory of the sword attack, and said helplessly. As soon as Unohana came up, she used the new swordsmanship she had just understood. Under the blessing of the powerful Reiatsu, the sharp sword in her hand quickly struck towards Yu Taifeng's face from a strange and tricky angle. Really understand the new swordsmanship. Yu Taifeng uses omniscience and omnipotence for continuous analysis, and remembers every movement of the opponent's sword deeply in his mind. He could clearly feel that the new swordsmanship Unohana used this time was quite different from the last time he fought. In the last match, Uchiha's swords were extremely fierce under Reiatsu's blessings, but they were simply going straight forward, without too many tricks and skills. However, this time, the swordsmanship that Uchiha used had a slightly strange smell in the viciousness. Good come. Yu Taifeng couldn't help but praised after blocking a sword. Uchiha was not distracted by the compliments of her opponent. At this moment, she was completely in the state, and she just wanted to use the new swordsmanship she had just understood without reservation. She seemed to have seen that the boy in front of her had fallen into a pool of blood covered in blood. When Uchiha thought of this scene, her eyes were a little red at this moment. Fighting, kill, blood. Uchiha felt that she hadn't been so excited for a long time. The metal collision sound of the sword and soldier colliding sounded again and again. In just a few seconds, Uchiha has made a dozen swords. Every time she took out the sword, she completely poured the Reiatsu from her body into the entire sword body. This time, he had full certainty, letting his opponent fall under his sword. But as time passed, Uchiha began to doubt life a little bit. Obviously, every time she took out the sword, she carried a huge amount of Reiatsu. However, the young man in front of him was not only able to easily resolve her sword moves time and time again. What made her a little bit unbelievable was that after the opponent had resolved her own sword move, she was able to use the same sword move to counterattack. What kind of monster is this? How could his learning ability be so strong? Although Uchiha was shocked in her heart, her whole person became even more excited. The boy in front of him seems to have completely become an interesting prey. Because she has a feeling that he is probably as good at learning as himself. The kind of person who can learn quickly in battle and apply the newly learned skills cleverly to actual combat. Facing such a strong opponent, Uchiha won't waste every minute and every second of the battle. Taifeng has resisted the opponent's attacks time and time again, and he is very clear at this moment who has turned on omniscience and omnipotence. This battle between herself and Uchiha has reached a deadlock. However, it is not difficult to break the current deadlock. Or, the opponent directly exploded out of the massive Reiatsu that was 10 times 100 times the current one, and completely suppressed himself on Reiatsu. Or, she can see through every attack of her own, find the flaws in it, and directly kill herself with a single blow. However, Taifeng knew very well that neither of these two possibilities existed. Although, he can know through omniscience and omnipotence that Uchiha's Reiatsu level is steadily increasing. But this growth rate is not enough for her to have a massive amount of crushing Reiatsu in a short period of time. Uchiha is certainly a genius who knows how to fight, but after all, she does not have the ability to open up. As for seeing through every counterattack one's own offensive, it is even more impossible. Because even as a kendo genius, Uchiha doesn't have the ability to foresee the future. After feeling the level of Reiatsu in his body, Taifeng decided to end the battle. After experiencing the breathing method of all things, for a while, Taifeng quickly avoided the sword that Uchiha struck again. He directly turned from defense to offense, and quickly swung his sword to shoot. I saw the sealed state waved in his hand, unbiasedly hitting the sword blocked by Uchiha. Crack! A crisp sound appeared on the iron sword held by Uchiha. At this moment, the blade of Uchiha's saber was directly broken into 2 pieces. Chapter 12 High and Few, Hard to Find a Friend. Seeking Collection of Flowers Evaluation. As the sword in Uchiha's hand broke into 2 pieces, the frantic expression on her face was completely frozen. At this moment, Mao Zihua wondered if she was dreaming. She couldn't believe that the sword in her hand was cut directly by the opponent. Let's stop here today, Taifeng said calmly while looking at the shocked Uchiha. How could this be? It's impossible, Mao Zihua said idiotically, looking at the truncated sword that fell on the ground. The texture of your iron sword is too bad, a fluke, just a fluke. Taifeng didn't want to expose his secrets. He casually found a reason and tried to prevaricate it. Let's go. I won't do anything against unarmed people. After hearing the other party's words, Uchiha wondered if she had heard her wrong. From the bottom of her heart, she regarded this powerful young man as a prey. She did not expect that the situation on the scene would be reversed because of her saber being cut off. I went directly from a hunter to a prey. The words the boy had just said made Uchiha feel a deep humiliation. This clearly means to look down on her. Unless you kill me. Otherwise I won't let it go. I can continue to fight. Come, let us enjoy the joy of fighting together. At this moment, Mao Zihua shouted to Taifeng in a paranoid and fanatical tone. After that, he directly waved his fist and rushed in the direction of Taifeng again. Even if my sword is gone, I can defeat you with my fist. Uchiha screamed madly and released all Reiatsu in her body. Because she wants to devote herself to and enjoy this battle. What's wrong with no weapons? As long as you can fight, even if you are unarmed, you must fight to the last minute. Read more at mtlarchive.com. As long as she is not killed by the opponent, then she can continue to fight. Taifeng's extraordinary fighting talents made Mao Zihua sickly addicted to it. Because, it has been a long time since there is no opponent who can make her so excited. Under the blessing of all-knowing and almighty, Taifeng looked at the fist waved by Mao Zihua at this moment, swayed his figure at random and easily avoided it. Stop it. This is a meaningless battle. Taifeng kindly reminded him while quickly avoiding the attacking fist. You are strong, deserving to be my opponent. Even with a fist, I can beat you too. Due to the excitement of Uchiha, the Reiatsu exuding from her body unexpectedly became a little frantic. She was always mad during the battle, and now she is more like a wounded beast. Although Taifeng is not a wicked person, he is definitely not a good person. He looked at the crazy Uchiha in front of him, and directly poured all the Reiatsu in his body into the sealed state in his hand. Then directly towards the direction of Uchiha, swing out with all his strength. At this time, Uchiha, blessed by the huge Reiatsu, has quickly arrived in front of Taifeng. She looked at the sword that the other party was swinging, and didn't make any evasive movements, but instead blocked it with her arm abruptly. A loud metallic sound rang from Uchiha's arm. Although she was unscathed in blocking the blow, she was also knocked back more than 10 meters away. This scene was seen by Taifeng, but he did not show any surprise. Because in the Shinigami world, any battle is actually a duel of Reiatsu. Whether it is Soul Society or Hawako Mundo, the bodies of all creatures are actually composed of souls. The higher the density of Reiatsu in the body, the higher the Reiatsu. The benefits of Reiatsu high become self-evident. Although Taifeng has the system now, his Reiatsu level has reached a bottleneck. This is also the main reason why he has been trying to break his own shackles through combat, trying to increase the density of the souls in the body. On the other hand, Uchiha, although she is now bare-handed, her Reiatsu is still much higher than Taifeng. It is not difficult to understand that Taifeng did not cause any harm to Mao Zihua after swinging a sword with all his strength. Because whether it is the density of the soul in the body or the level of Reiatsu on the body, Taifeng still has a considerable gap with the opponent. The reason why he was able to tie the opponent's hand was only because he relied on the omniscience and omnipotence, and the level of kendo that was far higher than Ujiha. Since we can't help each other, let's stop here. Taifeng stretched out his hands somewhat helplessly, and said. A strange look flashed in her eyes when she looked at Taifeng, who took the initiative to throw out the olive branch. At this moment, she has recognized Taifeng from the bottom of her heart. The reason why she went to fight in an almost crazy state was that she had been enjoying the fun of fighting. Now, it's finally hard to have an opponent who can be inextricably beaten with himself. Deep down in her heart, Ujiha is actually very happy. High and few, hard to find a friend. Although she has not communicated with the boy in front of her in a real sense. But after these two battles, Ujiha also seemed to see some of her own shadow from the opponent. Of course Taifeng didn't know that he had already received the other party's approval. He didn't have the time to consider those messy things. After all, this was the Soul Society that was perilous. Even if he has the system and omniscience and omnipotence, no one can guarantee that something will go wrong someday. Only by constantly getting stronger is the foundation of one's own life. Unohana looked at the boy not far away, and put Reiatsu, which she had released, into her body. If I hadn't accidentally broken my sword today, I wouldn't have let it go so easily. At this moment, Mao Zihua has completely lost the crazy look just now, her face is as calm as water, and she coldly said to Taifeng. Just as she was about to turn around and leave, after a burst of messy footsteps, a sudden applause came from not far away. Chapter 13 Siege, Seeking Evaluation of Collection of Flowers. When this abrupt applause suddenly appeared, Taifeng and Mao Zihua followed the voice and looked over. At this moment, I saw a tall and strong man looking at the two with a smirk. Taifeng naturally doesn't know who he is. However, outside the woods not far away, slowly began to gather more and more soul queens. He also guessed that these guys must not simply watch the excitement. It's really wonderful. After applauding, the strong man took the lead to walk out of the woods not far away. When the other Liuhun saw the Brahmani's actions, they also picked up the weapons in their hands and began to gather. Unexpectedly, among all Rukongai, the most ferocious and extremely evil person would have an unfavorable opponent. It's really rare, the strong man said loudly with a funny smile on his face. Matsukawa, what do you mean? Ujiha looked at everyone with a cold expression, and said disdainfully. Yeah, little baby, the more you are like this, the more excited I will be. Why don't you give my brother a squeeze, and then come home with me? Hee hee. Quote. After hearing what Ujiha said, the brawny man was not only not angry, but said with a wretched smile on his face. After seeing this scene, Taifeng curled his lips helplessly, then turned around and left, and said leisurely, you guys are busy first, I'm going home to rest. Although the group of people in front of them is pretty good, Taifeng doesn't treat them as the same thing at all. And he also believes that with Mao Jihua's skill, these guys can be solved at will. Smelly boy, stop it, are you her friend? The strong man in the lead screamed at Taifeng. Taifeng, who was going to go home for some insight, turned around and looked at the strong man coldly after hearing this sentence. When the strong man saw Taifeng's eyes, he took 2 steps back subconsciously as if he had fallen into an ice cave. Just as he was about to say something cruel, he only saw the young man raising the weapon in his hand and rushing towards him quickly. Quick, stop him quickly, who can kill him for me, I will let my brother reward him again. After hearing the words of the Brawny, these hundreds of Liuhuns hesitated, but after thinking about the identity of the Brawny brother, they raised their weapons and slew towards Taifeng. The hundreds of local ruffians living in the first few districts of Rukongai, although they have faintly heard of Ujihua's fierce name, they have no qualms about the teenagers in front of them. For the reward in the mouth of the strong man, they can't care so much now. After all, the Brawny's brother is a Shinigami. Even if he took out something casually, it could make them happy for a long time. Read more at mtlarchive.com. Mao Zihua frowned slightly when she saw Taifeng drew her sword and rushed towards the crowd. Later, she also picked up the truncated sword that had just been thrown on the ground, and followed Taifeng to kill it. Although in her eyes, it didn't take much effort to kill these awful. However, since the other party came to the door, she would definitely not be polite. What's more, that leader dared to ridicule himself like that. A few seconds later, one after another screams sounded one after another. The people who were still murderous just now are about to regret their intestines. They couldn't imagine that they would provoke these two killing gods. The sealed state waving in Taifeng's hand is like a sickle for mowing at the moment. In contrast, Taifeng was considered sweet in battle. On the other hand, Ujihua's fighting style is somewhat unscrupulous. Now she fell silent again to the slaughter, the broken sword in her hand kept harvesting the enemies in front of her. She quickly changed her figure, and the broken sword waving in her hand brought blood lines one after another. This originally quiet area is now like a purgatory on earth. Stumps and broken arms and scarlet blood can be seen everywhere on the ground. The screams and the strong smell of blood made the onlookers who tried to get closer to this place to stop one after another. After a period of massacre without any suspense, a mutilated corpse was lying on the ground. Don't kill me. My brother is Shinigami. Forgive me. Forgive me. The brawny man who led the crowd at the beginning knelt down on the ground begging for mercy in horror. He couldn't think that his long-planned conspiracy would end in this way. At this moment, he just wants to leave this ghost place quickly. However, just as he was about to beg for mercy again, he only saw a sharp sword light flying towards him. He looked at the young man swinging the sword in front of him with an unbelievable look. In the next second, he became a corpse with a separated head. Mao Zihua, who had entered the bloodthirsty state, glared at Taifeng, who shot faster than herself, and wanted to say something. Don't get excited, I never thought about helping you. This guy's attitude made me a little unhappy, so I killed it easily. Don't think too much. Quote. Taifeng said softly, while looking at the hundreds of boxes exploded on the ground, a burst of joy in his heart. Mao Zihua looked at the seemingly harmless young man before her, and said with an unprecedented smile, now it seems that we are really the same kind of people. You are really good. Quote. It's really an honor for me to be able to comment on me like this by Unohana. Taifeng also responded with a smile. Mao Zihua glanced at Taifeng with complicated eyes, and then asked somewhat curiously, you are already qualified to be my opponent, what is your name? No wonder Ujihua would ask this, because although the two have fought twice, she still doesn't know what the other party's name is. Taifeng. That's it, when I look for you next time, that's when you are defeated. After Unohana dropped a sentence, she turned around and left. Seeing the fading shadow, Taifeng smiled slightly and turned his gaze back to the hundreds of boxes that had fallen. Although they are all trash fish, the number is barely reasonable. Taifeng muttered to himself, while getting busy. After a busy period, Taifeng collected a wave of benefits again in the boxes where many corpses had fallen. After summarizing and categorizing the trophies he had just obtained, he was slightly surprised. Because, in the box dropped by the leader, Taifeng unexpectedly picked up what he dreamed of. Asterisk. Chapter 14 Learn from one another, seeking an evaluation of the collection of flowers. After a busy period, Taifeng acquired a considerable amount of Reiatsu. Although, his strength and the number of Reiatsu acquired before have already fallen into a bottleneck state. However, after playing against Ujihua several times, his strength has also increased by leaps and bounds in recent times. Therefore, being able to get a lot of Reiatsu again made Taifeng quite satisfied. Of course, this sort of natural thing is also reasonable. What surprised Taifeng most was that he picked up Kido from the leader who had personally killed him. After indifferently glanced at the corpse on the ground, Taifeng directly took all the trophies obtained into the system backpack. Then he turned and left, leaving only a messy scene. After returning to his residence, he opened the system interface and started to check it. The strongest box picking system. Host. Taifeng. Age. 17. Lineage. Human soul, Quincy. Reiatsu. 638. Special skills. Omniscience and Omnipotence. Kendo. Mastery. White hits. Mastery. Shunpo. None. Kido. 1 of Hado Chong. After closing the system interface, Taifeng began to think seriously. Although, the Kido he obtained this time is only one of the most basic Hado among many Kido. However, this can also be regarded as a new research direction for him. After gathering all Reiatsu on his body on the fingertips of his right hand, after Taifeng gave a soft drink, a slender linear air current burst out from his fingers. Rumble. After hitting the ground, the air current representing one of the Kido Chong caused a burst of dust in the entire backyard. After the dust and smoke dissipated, a small hole the size of a fist appeared on the ground that had just hit. Read more at mtlarchive.com. Although the destructive power of this Kido was somewhat unsatisfactory, Taifeng did not rush to open the all-knowing almighty, and according to the actions just now, it was brewing again. A burst of invisible Reiatsu wrapped around the fingertips of his right hand. After a while of analysis, a Mingwu smile appeared on Taifeng's face. Hado is one of the many Kido that is dedicated to attacking and killing. The most fundamental principle is to use the releaser itself as a medium to transform and sort Reiatsu in a unique way, and to induce a skill released by the souls around itself. Among the many Kido, whether it is Hado, Bakudo or Kaido, the higher the ranking, the lower the power and effect. On the contrary, the greater the power and effect. Moreover, each kind of Kido has shown power and effect in actual combat. It also varies according to the releaser's Reiatsu level and his proficiency with Kido. Under the analysis of all-knowing and all-powerful, Taifeng also sees through the essence of one of Hado Chong at this moment. As the most basic Hado, the principle of Chong is actually very simple. It just simply gathers Reiatsu at the fingertips and provokes the surrounding spirits to launch them. Thinking of this, Taifeng probably figured out why he could pick up this skill from the box that Lu Hun dropped. Because, as long as Lu Hun who has some training skills, as long as his Reiatsu level reaches a certain level, after many trainings, he can master it naturally. As for the other Kido's powers that resemble elements such as lightning and flame, Taifeng also has a faint suspicion in his mind. As early as the last time he studied the breath of all things, he discovered a very important clue. That is, the composition of all things in the entire soul society is closely related to the link C. Link C, with different attributes, after a special arrangement, constitutes everything in the soul society. As small as the dust that ordinary people can hardly detect, as large as the mountains and lakes in the soul society, all these are the result of various arrangements of spiritual suns. Thinking of this, Taifeng immediately put his inner thoughts into practice. All-knowing and almighty, is like a supercomputer, which is running at a fast speed. Taifeng also slowly entered a state of sentiment at this moment, and began to experience the spiritual sun around him with his heart. After a few minutes of comprehension, he finally felt a faint, spiritual sun of thunder and lightning. In this way, Taifeng made a grasping movement with his bare hands, and a spiritual child with lightning attributes was like tiny grains of rice, which he held tightly in his hand. He is familiar with the sorting method of one of Hado Chong, and applied it to the lightning attribute, Link C, that he caught just now. At this moment, the thunderbolt spirit he held tightly in his hand seemed to have vitality, and began to move quickly from his palm to his fingertips. After controlling Reiatsu to a certain degree of fit, Taifeng continued to use his right hand to absorb the lightning, Link C, around him. When those Link C finally reached saturation, he directly used the technique of one of Hado Chong, just released. Taifeng's right hand is wrapped in layers of lightning, Link C, as if wearing a glove interwoven with lightning. In the end, he will release the Reiatsu, merge with the Rizi in his hand, and directly hit the mixture of the two quickly. A blue lightning made a huge, cracking sound, and burst out from Taifeng's hands in an instant. When the lightning finally landed on the ground, there was a huge movement. The sound of thunder on a sunny day echoed in Taifeng's ears, showing the immense power of that lightning. With the disappearance of this lightning, the area on the ground that had just been hit directly turned into black scorched earth. If you can take in more lightning spirits and pour all the Reiatsu into it, the power should change geometrically. Taifeng thoughtfully analyzed it in his mind. After the test was successful, he couldn't help but feel happy. This shows that he is the first to see the way for Kido. In the next few days, Taifeng spent most of his time training in swordsmanship and Kido. He also understands more and more about the sealed state in his hands. And he also used one of Hado Chong as the blueprint, and successfully tested the Chong of the different element, Link C, attributes. After working hard for a few days, Taifeng went to and fro several Rukongai nearby, and personally killed many murderers. With the long-term high-intensity training, coupled with the convenience of the box-picking system, Taifeng's Reiatsu level has also been greatly improved. On this day, Taifeng was about to go out to hunting. A Shinigami dressed in a death tyrant, with a cold expression on his face, pulled out the Zanpakuto from his hand and quickly attacked him. Chapter 15 Revenge, Seeking Evaluation of Collection of Flowers. A murderous Reiatsu burst out of the stranger Shinigami. At this moment, he clasped Zanpakuto in his hand and quickly killed Taifeng. Due to the fact that the opponent was extremely angry, Reiatsu erupted from his body was already a little confused. Taifeng, who has experienced many battles, did not show any panic after feeling the opponent's Reiatsu. Because he has already judged from the murderous Reiatsu that the opponent's Reiatsu level is no different from his own. Thinking about it, Taifeng would not stand dry and stupid. With a serious face, he looked at the enemy that was fast approaching not far away, and turned on Omniscience and Omnipotence to judge the opponent's movement trajectory. The reason why Taifeng is so cautious is not because he is afraid of the other party. In his opinion, even opponents whose strength is almost the same as his own should be treated with all their strength. He didn't want to roll over, inexplicably just because he underestimated the enemy. Between the lightning and the fire, the stranger Shinigami has already killed Taifeng. He looked at the enemy in front of him angrily, and after releasing all Reiatsu, he slammed Zanpakuto in his hand. Boom! A crisp voice suddenly appeared, and Taifeng raised the sealed state with one hand while the stranger Shinigami swung the sword to resist the opponent's attack. After Taifeng's seemingly fierce offensive was easily resolved by Taifeng, he also reconsidered the enemy in front of him. The stranger Shinigami stared at Taifeng bitterly at this time, with an expression on his face that he couldn't wait to swallow him alive. Do you know who I am? Do you know who you killed? The unfamiliar Shinigami first broke the calm on the court, and asked in a cold tone. I don't know, I'm not interested in knowing. After all, too many people died in my hands. Taifeng replied calmly. Today, I want to use your blood to pay tribute to the dead soul of my brother. The stranger Shinigami yelled and then killed Taifeng again. At this moment, he wanted to vent all the anger in his heart. Taifeng was not only the murderer who killed his younger brother, but more importantly, he dared to show a disdainful attitude towards himself. As Shinigami, he has not been so despised in Rukongai for a long time. Read more at mtlarchive.com. Taifeng didn't have any idle time to guess the other party's thoughts. He has faintly guessed the identity and purpose of the other party from the conversation just now. According to the opponent's Reiatsu level, Taifeng can clearly feel each other's strength. Compared to the enemy who came quickly in front of him, his Reiatsu level was more than one grade different from Ujiha. Taifeng was already in his heart and sentenced the stranger Shinigami to death. However, this is the first time to fight Shinigami after passing through. He is very much looking forward to it. Can the other party let himself see some new tricks? After a few short matches, Taifeng couldn't help but feel disappointed from the bottom of his heart. Because the Shinigami who came here to seek revenge is so weak that he was unexpected. Whether it is his attack method or kendo skills, Taifeng feels a kind of toddler. The reason why the guy in front of me was able to become Shinigami seems to be just that his Reiatsu level is passable. Taifeng, who treats every battle as learning and training, is undoubtedly a little disappointed. After pouring all Reiatsu in his body into the sealed state, he is also ready to end this meaningless battle. After all, he has no time to play house with the guy in front of him. Taifeng waved the sealed state in his hand, seeing that he was about to cut to the enemy's vitals. At this moment, the sudden change occurred. The 8th of Bakudo, reprimand. An angry shout with a trembling sound came from Shinigami's vengeance. At this moment, a light blue spiritual shield appeared on his right arm. The sealed state that Taifeng waved was impartially cut on this shield. Although Revenge Shinigami is now pale as paper, and was repelled by Taifeng more than 10 meters away. But somehow he also relied on Kido, who had just used it, and barely withstood the fatal blow from Taifeng. Interesting. Although Taifeng was slightly admired in his heart, but in order to prevent new accidents from appearing again. He also unreservedly released all the Reiatsu in his body, and gathered the surrounding spirits under his feet. Under the guidance of Reiatsu after a while, countless subtle souls were attracted to Taifeng's feet quickly. When the soul under his feet reached the limit that he could mobilize at present. Taifeng quickly waved the sealed state in his hand, and the whole figure looked like an illusory ghost, appearing behind the enemy from its original position in an instant. Shinigami felt fortunate when he came to seek revenge. He thought he was almost killed by the opponent. However, what made him somewhat unexpected was, just now, who was still wandering between life and death, he was able to make an exception to use Kido, who was used to defend him. Although, he now has a feeling of almost losing his strength. But at any rate, he survived and escaped. Just as he was about to let out some ruthless words and continue fighting, he only felt a shadow quickly passing by. In the next second, he opened his eyes wide and covered his neck tightly with his hands, and fell to the ground unwillingly. Ding! A box falling around the host is detected. Is the host turned on? The system prompt appeared in Taifeng's mind. After hearing this prompt, Taifeng turned and looked at the corpse a few meters away, while responding to the system. Turn it on. Chapter 16 Kido Transformation, Seeking Evaluation of Collection of Flowers. Ding! Congratulations to the host for acquiring Reiatsu 136. Ding! Congratulations to the host for getting the Battle Sword X1. Ding! Congratulations to the host for obtaining Bakudo's 8th rebuke. Ding! Congratulations to the host for getting the Deadmaster outfit X1. Ding! After a series of tones, Taifeng also felt the changes in Reiatsu. Although the Shinigami he killed by himself, it seemed that he was just an ordinary Shinigami team member. But he also had to sigh at the moment. The loot dropped after killing Shinigami is really too rich. If you can kill a Shinigami on your own, such as Yamamoto Genryūsai's level of Shinigami, I am afraid that what you drop will directly make you soar into the sky. This also gave Taifeng an urge to hunt Shinigami. However, forget it after thinking about it. After all, if he really hunts Shinigami as prey, it is likely to attract the siege of Shinigami in Seraiti. It even attracted the attention of some powerful people. Now he is still very weak after all, completely incapable of being an enemy of Seraiti. After discarding some of the dropped scrap, he directly put on the Death Tyrant outfit he had just obtained. What Taifeng didn't expect was that the Deathmaster costume could change the size at will according to the user's figure. And his own feelings to the spirits around him have become clearer. A random Death Tyrant outfit is so advanced. It's no wonder that Shutara Senjumaru, who invented the Death Tyrant, could become one of the captains of the Zero Division. The battle just ended not only dropped Reiatsu, but also Zanpakudo. In addition, the dropped Bakudo number 8 rebuke also surprised Taifeng. Compared with the one of Hado Chong, obtained not long ago, the Bakudo obtained this time also gave him a new research direction. In the next few days, Taifeng used Omniscience and Omnipotence to analyze and decipher the acquired Kido. After finally getting the results to his satisfaction, he also experimented in the backyard of his residence. Full coverage. Reprimand. Following Taifeng's soft drink, a pair of light blue Link C armor enveloped him. After feeling the Link C armor that completely covered his body, he smiled and lifted the control of the Link C around his body. The Link C armor that had just wrapped him also slowly disappeared. This is a defensive method developed by Taifeng based on the 8 rebuke of Bakudo in recent days. Read more at mtlarchive.com. Compared with the one-sided defensive power of Bakudo number 8, mobilizing the spirits around him to form armor can protect himself well. However, Taifeng did not stop in the slightest, but after a short adjustment, he carried out a new experiment again. This time, according to the principle of one of the Hado Chong, he used Reiatsu to reversely suck the Reiatsu into his hand. I saw the sealed state that was originally placed on the ground, followed by the spirit of the reaction force, and quickly flew into his hands. Well, the effect is not bad. Next, try this again. Taifeng was thinking about it in his heart, while continuing to make new experiments. 6 parties scolded. After a soft sip, he used 8 of Bakudo's rebuke, 6 times in a row. Immediately afterwards, he used the 6 Kido that he had just used as quickly as possible, according to the principle of full coverage rebuke. At this time, a 6-sided cube composed of Link C trapped a small and medium bird in the air. The little bird obviously didn't know what was happening around him. When it was trapped, it could only keep trying to fly out of the confined space where it was imprisoned. However, no matter how this little bird tried, it was still trapped in the light blue Link C cube. The reason is that it banged its head bang, and it didn't help. Condensation. After Yu Taifeng calmly uttered a word, the light blue cube that originally imprisoned the bird quickly began to shrink. And, it shrank to the extreme in an instant. The little bird who hadn't figured out the situation was directly crushed into a cloud of blood mist by the quickly gathered souls. It's done. Yu Taifeng looked at the blood mist appearing in the air, and a smile appeared on his calm face. After all, transforming the defensive Kido into a means of attack is very fulfilling. The successful Yu Taifeng was in a good mood. After pinning the sealed state to his waist, he took out the previously picked Zanpakuto from the system backpack and prepared to start new research. Yu Taifeng, come out. At this time, Ujihua's voice came in from outside the wall of the backyard. After putting Zanpakuto away, Yu Taifeng immediately opened the small door in the backyard. What surprised Yu Taifeng was that Reiatsu, who hadn't seen Ujihua in a few days, improved his level by a big margin. This could not help but made him a little jealous. Although I have the system and the omnipotent, every increase in strength requires a lot of learning and experimentation. But as a combat genius, Ujihua only needs to fight to improve her strength. However, this just made Yu Taifeng feel a little sigh. After all, as a traverser, his eyes and insights are not comparable to anyone in Shinigami's world. Girl Maojihua, long time no see. Yu Taifeng greeted with a smile. Accept the move. Mao Zihua entered the state directly, and struck quickly with a sweet voice. Yu Taifeng shook his head helplessly, then pulled out his sealed state and greeted him. After a short confrontation, Yu Taifeng and Ujihua were both shaken back more than 10 meters because of the opponent's attack. Looking at the confident Yu Zihua not far away, Yu Taifeng was a little surprised. Because just after a short test, she found that Ujihua completely changed her fighting strategy this time. If we say that the previous few times Ujihua paid more attention to skill in the battle. So this time, she abandoned those fancy swordsmanship skills and directly poured all of her Reiatsu into the weapon in her hand. I really didn't expect that girl Mao Zihua would be so direct this time. Yu Taifeng said in a soft voice with a hint of approval in his eyes. I was too careless before. Because, I have been fighting and analyzing for a period of time recently. I found that the level of Reiatsu on you is far lower than mine. Well, wanting to beat you is actually very simple. I just need to release all my Reiatsu directly and use the crushing power. After Unohana finished speaking, with a powerful Reiatsu, she struck again with a sword. After Yu Taifeng heard Mao Zihua's words again, he was slightly moved. Unexpectedly, the other party found out so quickly, the key to the problem. At this time, not far from the battlefield between the two. The two figures standing in the dark are watching them carefully. Chapter 17 Secret Transaction, Seeking Evaluation of Collection of Flowers. While Yu Taifeng and Ujihua were fighting fiercely, the two figures standing in the dark were watching them carefully. How about Yamamoto? Isn't that guy good? Very good, but he killed Shinigami. A bald old man responded coldly. Hey, can you not be so pedantic and poor? Ermiya Wangyu looked at Yamamoto Genryūsai beside him, and said helplessly, holding his forehead. Because he killed Shinigami, so he must die. Yamamoto was not moved by the opponent's ridicule, his eyes were full of killing intent. Isn't it just killing a team member of the lowest rank? As for letting you do it yourself. And that guy who died, just happened to reach the minimum standard to become Shinigami. Wang Yu continued to persuade him somewhat unwillingly. Even the lowest level Shinigami is ours. So this boy must die. As for that little girl, if she can pass my test, I can consider making her a Shinigami. Yamamoto replied calmly. Yamamoto, I asked someone to find out about the dead guy. It is said that before he became Shinigami, he was a famous rogue in Rukongai. Moreover, after he became Shinigami, he didn't get honest. Forget it, just tell me, how can you let that guy go? Wang Yu looked at Yamamoto who was not getting oil and salt in front of him, and finally said a little angry. It's not impossible to let him go, but the favor I owed you before has been wiped out. A sly light flashed in Yamamoto's eyes, and he turned to look aside Wang Yu. Yamamoto, you treacherous fellow, it turns out that you had planned. After hearing Yamamoto's words, Wang Yu realized that he was being tricked. Although he was a little helpless, he soon felt relieved after thinking of the magical power that the young man had mastered not far away. After all, such mysterious talents as teenagers are rare. If it weren't for the means of seeing the boy with his own eyes that day, he would have a feeling of cherishing his talents. Perhaps he is still leisurely in front of the salted fish in the Phoenix Palace. As a dignified sword god, you are actually willing to use your favor to protect a little guy who has nothing to do with you. Maybe there is something about him that can make our eyes shine. Yamamoto said calmly, turning his gaze back to where he was just now. At that time you will know. Wang Yu said with a smug smile. At this moment, the battle between Yu Taifeng and Ujihua has also entered a white-hot stage. As Unoka changed her strategy in advance, she chose to use the overwhelming Reiatsu as the main means of combat. Although this kind of head-to-head tactics did not achieve very obvious results, after one thing, two things, they can be regarded as inextricable. Read more at mtlarchive.com. Yu Taifeng used various techniques to cleverly resolve Ujihua's offensives. However, he knew very well in his heart that he wanted to beat the opponent now. I am afraid it would be a little difficult. The opponent released Reiatsu, who was much higher than himself, and continued to oppress himself. Although, Ujihua's actions will not cause any substantial harm to herself. However, Yu Taifeng felt a little helpless. Through this battle, he also understood that it was imminent to improve Reiatsu. Because, this is the Shinigami world after all, and any battle is ultimately a duel of Reiatsu. No matter how many skills he has, and some inventions that can surprise people. But the foundation of these conditions still needs the support of powerful Reiatsu. After a period of fighting, Yu Taifeng still came to a conclusion that neither side could do anything to each other. Therefore, he also decided to use his real strength to end this battle. 6 parties scolded. After avoiding a new round of attacks, Yu Taifeng slapped out the Kido he had just studied. I saw a cage made up of blue spirits, trapping Uchiha in it in an instant. The side door left. After seeing the dawn of victory, Uchiha shouted in disdain after being trapped. After pouring all Reiatsu in her body into her weapon, she held the sword in both hands and slashed to the spirit cage in front of her. Boom. After a loud noise, Uchiha was surprised to find out. Although he broke the opponent's strange trick, an inexplicable pressure was suddenly exerted on him. Condensation. As Yu Taifeng spoke again, Uchiha only felt that she was stuck in a quagmire. Although this didn't cause any harm to myself, it restrained myself greatly. At this time, she felt that her usual quick movements had become somewhat dull. Wang Yu and Yamamoto, who were watching the battle in the dark, all showed awe-inspiring expressions after seeing this scene. Strong people like them can easily feel the degree of Reiatsu on both sides of the war. Although the Reiatsu that Yu Taifeng exudes is not as good as Unohana, the various techniques used in the battle cannot help but let the two focus their attention. However, they know very well that this battle will eventually become a duel of Reiatsu. However, when Yu Taifeng used the Kido that they had never seen before, their eyes lit up involuntarily. How about Yamamoto? My vision is pretty good, right? Haha. Although Wang Yu's heart was also full of surprises, in order to be able to let his old friends suffer, he showed a triumphant expression and said happily. Well, it's a good seed. Although Yamamoto was also slightly shocked, he quickly returned to his original serious expression, but a strange gaze flashed quickly in his eyes. The battle on the field continued, when Uchiha used Reiatsu to dissipate the pressure on her body with difficulty, and again swung her sword towards Yu Taifeng. Yu Taifeng looked at the Uchiha rushing towards him again, and quickly gathered the spirits of various attributes around him in the palm of his hand through the mobilization of Reiatsu. Lei Chong. He gave a soft yell, blasting out the violent thunder and lightning energy that was rolling in his hand. At this moment, a beam of light that was full of thunder and lightning attributes, struck in the direction of Uchiha at a terrifying speed. This trick, Lei Chong, is a new trick invented by Yu Taifeng based on one of Hado Chong. This is also one of his more satisfying masterpieces in the continuous experiments over the past few days. Uchiha looked at the light beam, rushing towards her in shock, and was slightly stunned. When she reacted again, she hurriedly gathered all Reiatsu in front of her to resist the attack. Although she reacted extremely quickly and blocked part of the beam in front of her, she was still half a beat slower in the end. Seeing that the remaining light beam was about to rush towards her door, a suffocatingly powerful Reiatsu suddenly appeared not far away. Asterisk. Chapter 18 The Test of Yamamoto's Heavy Country, seeking an evaluation of the collection of flowers. The Lei Chong that Yu Taifeng had just used was about to hit Uchiha's face. However, a suffocating Reiatsu appeared suddenly. The emergence of Reiatsu not only shook the Thunder Chong in front of Uchiha's eyes. Yu Taifeng and Uchiha, who were still in battle, were overthrown directly to the ground. At this moment, they all fell to the ground under the pressure of this powerful Reiatsu. Both Yu Taifeng and Uchiha looked at the source of Reiatsu, a burly old man. The old man wearing a black death tyrant suit and wearing a white haori appeared indifferently not far from the two. A middle-aged man with black curly hair and wearing the same clothes walked side by side with him. The curly-haired man was not as serious as the old man, but looked at Yu Taifeng with a playful look, with a bright smile on his face. Little brother, I didn't expect us to meet again so soon. Haha. Although Uchiha didn't know who came, she could guess from the other party's clothes. Yu Taifeng is completely in another state of mind now, because he is very clear about the identities of the two. And not long ago, he pitted one of them sturdily. Oh, the battle just now was a feast for the eyes. I haven't seen such a wonderful battle in a long time. Ermewu Wang Yu still looked like he was laughing and joking, and began to comment to himself. When he wanted to continue to say something, he saw Yamamoto tilting his head and looking at him, then he curled his lips and showed a helpless expression. We must be clear in your hearts as well as our intentions, so I won't repeat them. One is the most notorious evil in Rukongai. One is the murderer who killed Shinigami. The old man must kill you personally today, so that those guys with ulterior motives can see what the end is all about. Snort. Yamamoto cleared his throat and said slowly in a low voice. At this time, Yamamoto exuded shocking aura, and his murderous aura broke out from him instantly. Although Yu Taifeng and Uchiha were mentally prepared, they couldn't help but feel a little excited after hearing Yamamoto's words. After all, it's better to die than to live. No one wants to die like this casually. Hey, Yamamoto, you promised me to let him go. How do you say it doesn't count now? Wang Yu said excitedly in front of him after hearing Yamamoto's words. Quote. After Yu Taifeng and Uchiha heard what Wang Yu said, they couldn't help being speechless for a while. Although they heard the truth, they understood that Yamamoto was acting. However, the murderous aura just exuded from Yamamoto was truly felt by the two. Wang Yu. Yamamoto looked at Wang Yu who stood in front of him, feeling helpless. However, he adjusted quickly, cleared his throat and then said, "The old man thinks that you are a rare talent for both of you, so I decided to give you a chance. Use your strongest strength to attack me, as long as I feel satisfied, you can live." Read more at mtlarchive.com. Come on together. Let's start. Quote. Yu Taifeng and Unohana looked at each other after hearing Yamamoto's words, and they also had their own plans in their hearts. But this is the end of the matter, and they are unavoidable and can only do what the other party says. Yu Taifeng held tightly the sealed state in his hand and began to brew. And Unohana, who was in the same situation as him, was now dignified and shook hands with the weapon, putting on a posture ready to attack. "Come on, let the old man see how capable you are," Yamamoto yelled angrily as he looked at the two not far away. Although, he only uses a relatively small portion of Reiatsu now. But even so, Yu Taifeng and Unohana feel a sense of breathlessness. Yu Taifeng looked at Yamamoto not far away, quickly controlled Lingxi under his feet, and moved, quickly, toward the opponent's position. Under the impact of this Reiatsu, he could make a movement similar to Shunpo, but at this moment it only increased his speed slightly. Yu Zihua looked at Yu Taifeng who had already rushed out, and rushed along behind him. However, her speed is obviously much slower than Yu Taifeng. With the analysis of omniscience and omnipotence, and the blessing of all things breathe, Yu Taifeng only feels that Yamamoto is like a mountain that does not move. But this also inspired his eagerness in disguise. He wants to see how terrifying Yamamoto is now. A few seconds later, Yu Taifeng and Unohana arrived in front of Yamamoto one after another. They tried their best to chop their weapons at Yamamoto. Boom boom. A burst of metal collision sounded from Yamamoto's body. Yu Taifeng and Mao Zihua's full blow not only did not cause him damage, but was shocked by reaction force dozens of meters away. After a short contact, Yu Taifeng finally understood why Yamamoto was called the strongest Shinigami. Because Rao has omniscience and omnipotence, and all things breathing, and he can't see any flaws in Yamamoto. But he was relieved immediately. After all, no matter how hard he tried now, it was impossible to cause any harm to Yamamoto. It's better to use Yamamoto as a wooden stake with anti-injury effect and use all your strength. After all, this is Yamamoto's test of them, and it must be an examination of their potential. 6 parties scolded. Yu Taifeng rushed to Yamamoto again, and when he was about to approach him, suddenly he freed up a hand and pointed it in the direction Yamamoto was. He used all the Reiatsu in his body to mobilize the spirits around him in an attempt to influence Yamamoto. A cage made up of blue spirits envelops Yamamoto as a whole. However, because of Yamamoto's super strong Reiatsu, the cage of blue spirits seemed to collapse at any time. After feeling the cage trapped in it, Yamamoto shattered the entire spirit cage with a light drink. "Are you capable of this?" Yamamoto said calmly. Unohana also came to Yamamoto at this time. She poured all the Reiatsu into the weapon, and then slammed it at the target. Yamamoto looked at the weapon swinging at him indifferently, without a trace of expression on his face. At this moment, Unohana suddenly changed her body shape, twisting her body and skipping Yamamoto's front at a strange angle, and came behind him. Lei Chong. Fire. Bing Chong. Sha Chong. Wind. 6 parties scolded. Hey. Yu Taifeng directly threw the sealed state into the air, and after hitting 6 spirits with different attributes one after another, they directly merged the 6 spirits. I saw a 5-color light beam, flying quickly in the direction of Yamamoto. The trick Yu Taifeng just used, but his most satisfying masterpiece not long ago. At that time, after analyzing with all-knowing and all-powerful, he used 6-party rebuke as a cage to imprison the souls of different attributes. Although he could not yet integrate the spirits of different attributes, but using this technique, he can also gather them. Unohana again swung the sword at the back of Yamamoto's neck, trying to interfere with him. However, Yamamoto didn't even turn his head back, letting Unohana's sword attack him. Yamamoto looked at the 5-color light beams flying towards him, and his original face was a little surprised at this moment. Because this is the first time he has seen anyone who can fuse the basic Kido with different attributes. Yamamoto showed a slight approval in his eyes and nodded slightly. However, because the strength of the two is too weak, Yamamoto did not care about their attacks. After all, in the face of absolute strength, any technique seems pale and weak. Break. After Yamamoto gave a soft drink, a stronger Reiatsu spewed out from his body and directly blew the two who attacked him. Yu Taifeng and Uo Zihua fell heavily to the ground, a little embarrassed and slowly got up, ready to launch a new round of attacks. At this moment, the unsmiling Yamamoto showed a slightly relieved smile and said, "You are qualified." Asterisk. Chapter 19 Happy Ending, Seeking Collection of Flowers Evaluation. When Yu Taifeng heard Yamamoto's words, he couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. Because, if you want to be a strong player in this world, you must enter Seraiti to learn. Getting Yamamoto's approval is also an opportunity for him to get in touch with Seraiti as soon as possible. Yamamoto, I have known you for so long, I didn't even know you would laugh. Seeing that Yamamoto's test was over, Nameya Wang Yu joked. Yamamoto ignored Wang Yu, who was smiling hippie, and he was looking at Yu Taifeng and Unohana with a serious face. Then he said, "Since you have passed the test, then make your choice." Although Yu Taifeng knew Yamamoto's purpose in his heart, he still pretended to look at Yamamoto who had just spoken in a daze. After experiencing a crushed battle, Unohana looked at Yamamoto without knowing it at this time. Little guys, introduce yourself. I am Namaya Wangyu. You can call me by name, or you can call me, Sword God. As for this unsmiling old man, it is the famous Shinigami captain in Seraiti Yamamoto Genryūsai. You just call him Yamamoto's chief deputy captain. Very unexpected, right? Ha ha. Quote. Wang Yu directly interrupted Yamamoto next to him, and started the introduction familiarly. Yu Taifeng naturally knows who these two are, but he hides his emotions well and pretends to be surprised. After hearing Wang Yu's introduction, Unohana, who was calm on weekdays. Although she was shocked, she soon hid her expression. Little guys, don't be nervous. Don't look at this old guy's serious face, in fact, he is very short-sighted. In his heart, he hopes that you can become Shinigami. Ha ha. Wang Yu saw the expressions of the two of them in his eyes, and said again, as if talking. Yamamoto turned his head and glanced at Wang Yu before continuing to speak. Since you have passed the old man's test, now you have two options. Or follow us back to Seraiti to study and become Shinigami. Either keep the status quo and continue to live in Rukongai. Quote. Yu Taifeng had already guessed that Yamamoto would say something similar, and he would inevitably choose to study in Seraiti. However, Unohana said in a surprisingly soft voice, if I become Shinigami, does it mean that I can't fight at will? Yu Taifeng was not surprised by what Unohana said just now. Read more at mtlarchive.com. Because he knows that Unohana is inevitable for Shinigami, otherwise the concept of Kenpachi would not be born. However, when Yamamoto and Wang Yu heard Unohana's doubts, both frowned slightly and looked at the girl in front of them. From the day Shinigami was born, he has been responsible for maintaining the balance of this world. Blindly silent in the fight will only make your heart be blinded by the killing. Although you have passed the test of the old man, this does not mean that the old man will continue to let you do whatever you want. Snort. The hot-tempered Yamamoto, after hearing Uyoka's remarks, said a little angrily. After Wang Yu glanced at Yamamoto secretly, he looked helplessly at Unohana and said, one must seize this opportunity. The old man Yamamoto is looking forward to your joining. As for you, little girl, your hostility is simply too heavy. After you become Shinigami, I will introduce you to someone whose Kido should make some changes for you. And you, brat, I didn't forget that you lied to me. Humph. Quote. On the surface, Wang Yu's words were meant for Unohana, but after hearing the last words, Yu Taifeng also understood his thoughts. The dignified, sword god, has already said this. If she and Unohana still don't appreciate it, I'm afraid things will not be that simple. Moreover, he really pitied Wang Yu. After a short time of contact, Yu Taifeng felt that he was a reliable person. Whether it is his casual personality or unruly style of doing things, Yu Taifeng has a new understanding of the sword god in front of him. After a period of observation, Yu Taifeng also found that it was indeed as Wang Yu said. The current old man Yamamoto seems to be quite hot-tempered. Yu Taifeng wouldn't be so stupid that he touched their mold, otherwise he must be the one who suffers. Thinking of this, his eyes were full of firmness and said, thank you Lord Sword God and Lord Captain for your love. I am willing to follow you into Seraiti, and I am willing to become a Shinigami. Quote. Ha ha ha, this is really great, Wang Yu said happily, put his arm on Yamamoto's shoulder casually, and raised his eyebrows. In fact, after hearing Unohana's words, Wang Yu's heart was still a little nervous, but he was very clear about the temper of Yamamoto on the side. If these two little guys make Yamamoto angry because they don't know how to promote, I'm afraid this matter will not end well. But he is very clear that Yamamoto is still very optimistic about these two from the bottom of his heart. Otherwise, with Yamamoto's straightforward character, he would not agree to himself so readily and let the boy in front of him go. When Yu Taifeng made a choice, Unohana also pondered for a long time, and then said in a positive tone, as long as I can become stronger, I don't mind entering Seraiti with you. Yamamoto, who had been silent for a long time, nodded in satisfaction after hearing the replies of the two, since you are willing to become Shinigami, then come here today. Ha ha ha, happy to everyone, happy to everyone. Yamamoto, don't be strained. I guess you are already secretly happy in your heart. Ha ha, Wang Yu felt happy from the bottom of his heart, because the two newly promoted colleagues in front of him made him full of curiosity. Yamamoto cast a glance at Wang Yu, who was smiling, and moved his arm on his shoulder away with his hand, before turning around and leaving. Wang Yu looked at the back of Yamamoto's quick departure, and couldn't bear the curiosity anymore, and Shunpo came directly in front of Yu Taifeng and Unohana. He looked at the two people in front of him with interest, and asked, little guys, I haven't known your names after having known you for so long. Master Sword God, my name is Yu Taifeng, please take care of me in the future. The flower of Mao. After hearing the answers of the two, Wang Yu showed a bright smile. Immediately after using Shunpo again, he rushed in the direction where Yamamoto had left. Little guys, someone will come here to pick you up at noon tomorrow, so enjoy your last free time. Ha ha. Hey, Yamamoto, wait for me. Although Wang Yu had left quickly, his voice came to Yu Taifeng and Unohana's ears. The next day, a Shinigami who was ordered to meet the two led Yu Taifeng and Unohana into Seraiti from the White Road in the west. Asterisk. Chapter 20 Doubts of the God of Swords. Because of the peculiarities of Yu Taifeng and Unohana's identities. So they skipped the entrance test of the Spiritual Arts Academy and received their school uniforms directly. After half a day of familiarity, Yu Taifeng and Ujihua, who were wearing school uniforms, also came to start their student careers. It may be the reason why the above said hello, Yu Taifeng did not go with the students of the same period to select his own sealed state in the Kazama of the Spiritual Arts Academy. Yu Taifeng, who was happy and leisurely, began to get acquainted with the surrounding environment in a leisurely manner. Before he knew it, Yu Taifeng had walked out of the scope of the Spiritual Arts Academy and came to a lively street nearby. At this moment, a familiar voice came from behind Yu Taifeng. Hey, little guy, where are you going? The visitor is no one else, but the Ermeiwu Wangyu that Yu Taifeng has just met a day ago. At this moment, he was looking at Yu Taifeng with a smile on his face, and nodded very satisfied. It turned out to be Lord Sword God, why are you here? Yu Taifeng also said with a smile. It's so boring to be alone in the Phoenix Palace, so I just went out and strolled around. It's a coincidence that I didn't expect to meet you here. Ha ha, quote. Wang Yu looked at the boy in front of him, and the smile on his face became thicker. Yu Taifeng would not believe that he was able to encounter Wang Yu because of a coincidence. After all, his first contact with Wang Yu was full of drama. At this time, he also began to think in his heart. Because I already had the sealed state in my hands, I didn't go to the Shama with the colleges of the same period. Behind this seemingly inadvertent, there must be a shadow of Wang Yu's participation. When Wang Yu came here to encounter with himself, he must be looking for something important with him. The thing that can make the dignified sword god put down his body is probably also very important to him. Little guy, I wonder if you are interested in going to my Phoenix Palace. Wang Yu didn't mean anything, but directly explained his intentions. It is my honor to be able to visit the residence of Lord Blade God. Yu Taifeng replied very simply. Haha, it's really great. Then let's go. After receiving the affirmative answer, Wang Yu patted Yu Taifeng on the shoulder, and then led him towards the Phoenix Palace. Half an hour later, under the leadership of Wang Yu, Yu Taifeng came to the front of the Phoenix Palace. How is it? My Phoenix Palace looks pretty good, right? Haha, Wang Yu said to Yu Taifeng with a bit of an asterisk. But it's no wonder that Wang Yu is like this, because the architectural style of the Phoenix Palace in front of him is almost meaningless to describe it as magnificent. Read more at mtlarchive.com. Come here. Today I must show you a good tour. It's been a long time since there have been new guests here. As the host, Wang Yu led Yu Taifeng around the Phoenix Palace, while introducing various things in the Phoenix Palace. After a period of visit, Yu Taifeng discovered a very important problem. That is, there are no anthropomorphic Zanpakuto in the current Phoenix Palace. But when he thought about the current timeline, he was relieved. After all, now, but 1,000 years before the story of Shinigami began. Wang Yu didn't anthropomorphize some Zanpakuto, which can be regarded as the past. After all, 1,000 years of time is enough for many things to happen. After Wang Yu introduced the inside and outside of the Phoenix Hall, he led Yu Taifeng to the hall of the Phoenix Hall. At this time, Wang Yu, who was sitting in the main seat, looked at Yu Taifeng again with interest, and then he seemed to stop talking. Wang Yu's performance was seen by Yu Taifeng, and he just responded with a faint smile at the beginning. However, Wang Yu, who was sitting on the Lord's seat, looked at Yu Taifeng without saying a word, which really made him feel a little hairy. After all, being a normal person, being stared at by another person with that indescribable look, will definitely feel a response. Master Blade God, thank you very much for your hospitality, just tell me if you have anything to do. You keep staring at me like this, it makes me feel a little weird. Yu Taifeng took the lead in breaking the silence on the court, and said with some embarrassment. Haha, little guy, in fact, inviting you here, there is indeed one thing that needs your help. But I think you probably guessed it too. Wang Yu raised an eyebrow at Yu Taifeng who was sitting not far away, and then said. Is it because of that branch? In fact, Yu Taifeng had the answer in his mind just now. Actually, it's a coincidence that I went to the black market in the Zaraki district a while ago because I was bored here. However, that place is not as interesting as the legend. Unexpectedly, your appearance made me see something different. So, Wang Yu briefly explained the ins and outs of the matter, and said as he looked at Yu Taifeng expectantly. So you are more curious, why can I cut the iron sword with a branch, right? Yu Taifeng replied softly. Yes, I don't know how you did it. Wang Yu stood up excitedly after hearing the key to the matter. In fact, it's like this. Yu Taifeng smiled slightly and began to explain the theory of all things breathing to Wang Yu in detail. However, in the process of explaining, Yu Taifeng didn't mention the system and the omnipotent thing. After all, this is a secret belonging to him alone, and he must not let anyone know it. 10 minutes later, Wang Yu's face was full of shock. He looked at Yu Taifeng with the look of a monster, and said with a serious face, it turns out to be like this. It's incredible. Unexpectedly, at a young age, you can walk your own way. I don't think it will be long before you will become famous. Quote. Master Sword God is absurd. This is just something I found out accidentally, I can only say that my luck is better. Yu Taifeng responded with a smile. At this moment, Wang Yu felt that he had an urge to vomit blood. This is simply too modest. Can you still chat happily? But when Wang Yu changed his mind, he was relieved. Every genius has his own personality, not to mention the enchanting Yu Taifeng. Besides, after several contacts with Yu Taifeng, Wang Yu still admires each other very much from the bottom of his heart. Although, Yu Taifeng's current strength is still very weak. However, he thinks of his unconstrained fighting style and the amazing discovery of all things breathe. Wang Yu believes that with time, Yu Taifeng will surely become a strong man who is not inferior to him. Now that the doubts in his heart have been answered, Wang Yu didn't ask any more questions. After all, which genius didn't have some secrets of his own? There is a bug here, I hope you readers will understand. The timeline for the beginning of the book is 1,000 years before the beginning of the Shinigami plot. Due to some problems with the information that the younger brother consulted early, the setting thrown out in the second chapter is not Spiritual Arts Academy. When I checked relevant information today, I found that there was a Spiritual Arts Academy, thousands of years before the beginning of the Shinigami plot. In this chapter, the protagonist and Mao Zihua became students of the Spiritual Arts Academy, which is indeed inconsistent. Here, the little brother said from the heart, I'm sorry. Chapter 21 Secrets and Tests Seeking Evaluation of Collection Flowers. Since I became the master of the Phoenix Palace, there is nothing I can do every day except forging the sealed state. Those four guys didn't know what they were busying all day long, and they didn't know to come to visit me. And the guy Yamamoto, who is busy dealing with all kinds of affairs all day, will never show up with me at all. This is really boring. Quote. Wang Yu was like a tireless talker, spitting out to Yu Taifeng. At this moment, Yu Taifeng felt helpless. The reason why he told Wang Yu about the breadth of all things that he had researched without any reservation was also regarded as paying back the other party's favor. And he is also very clear that there is no all-knowing and all-powerful sword god, even if he knows the breathing of all things, there is no way to practice it. However, he couldn't think of it that the dignified sword god turned out to be a talkative. After a while, Wang Yu's dry mouth finally stopped. Yu Taifeng asked, Master Dao Shen, I have a question to ask you. In a good mood, Wang Yu waved his hand and said, if you have any questions, just ask. In fact, I have always been very curious, what exactly are the raw materials for the sealed state? Yu Taifeng said. After hearing Yu Taifeng's words, Wang Yu's face was full of embarrassment. After all, the question raised by Yu Taifeng has involved some secrets. However, he changed his mind, with the other party's talent, sooner or later he would still have to come into contact with these things. So he replied seriously, the sealed state, as the prototype of Zanpakuto, was created by myself. As for the materials used, they are the steel and spirits unique to Soul Society, as well as the souls of many Shinigami. Quote. After getting the answer he wanted, Yu Taifeng began to think in his heart. Soul Society's unique steel and soul, this is fairly easy to understand. However, many Shinigami souls are also incorporated into the raw materials for the sealed state, which Yu Taifeng never expected. As for the source of these Shinigami souls, Yu Taifeng also has many speculations in his mind. After initially obtaining the sealed state, he used omniscience and omnipotence to analyze and study it. The conclusion is that the ultimate essence of sealed state is evolution. From sealed state to Zanpakuto, this is a kind of evolution. Zanpakutos, Shikai, and Bankai can also be regarded as a kind of evolution. Although the mystery is inextricably linked to the users of Zanpakuto. However, Yu Taifeng thinks able to develop Zanpakuto as much as possible and call it its real name. It is likely to have a huge relationship with the Shinigami soul fused in it. At this time, he couldn't help but think of someone. The other captain in the Zero Division is Ikibe Hayasube, known as the Eye Monk. He was endowed with special abilities by the Spirit King, not only the name of everything in the original Soul Society, but also the real names of all Zanpaku swords. Read more at mtlarchive.com. The Eye Monk probably knows the source of the Shinigami spirit used to create the sealed state. It seems that I have to find a way to reach him as soon as possible. At this time, Yu Taifeng couldn't help but look forward to how his sealed state would change after it became Zanpakuto. And, what is his real name, Zanpakuto? But right now, he has to improve his strength as soon as possible. After continuing to chat with Wang Yu for a while, he left the Phoenix Palace and returned to the Spiritual Arts Academy. At this time, the students who entered the school at the same time as him all happily took the sealed state they had just obtained, and walked toward their dormitories one after another. Now that he has become a student here, Yu Taifeng still has some expectations in his heart. In the morning of the next day, the entrance ceremony started as scheduled. Not surprisingly, Yu Taifeng saw Ujiha among the students in the same period. Welcome to the Spiritual Arts Academy. As the institution responsible for education in Seraiti, we aim to cultivate excellent Shinigami to serve the Soul Society and the world. For the next 6 years, I will be responsible for teaching and supervising you how to be a good Shinigami. At the entrance ceremony, the dean and teachers gave symbolic speeches. Then began the placement test. The test method is very simple. The students only need to stand next to the test stone and burst out their own Reiatsu. The test stone will be divided into 4 grades: white, blue, orange, and red according to the strength level of Reiatsu and the color of the stone. Among them, red represents the highest level of Reiatsu grade. At this time, the teachers responsible for the inspection and recording work performed their duties and began to roll their names. Whenever the name of a student is called, someone will come forward to conduct a test, and the entire test process is proceeding in an orderly manner. Although most students can light up the test stone, they can only reach the white passing level. After a while, a young man with a luxurious temperament came to the test stone. The appearance of the luxurious boy caused a lot of sow movement. Because he is Kuchiki Silver Ridge, the young master of the Kuchiki family among the 5 nobles of Soul Society. After a soft drink, he burst out Reiatsu from his body. At this moment, the test stone next to him started to glow with bursts of orange light following this Reiatsu. Kuchiki Silver Ridge, Orange. 3rd class Reiatsu. When the test teacher reported the results of the test, not only the colleges off the court, but also some teachers on the court, all looked surprised. After all, the orange 3rd class Reiatsu level is very close to the average Shinigami team member. Oh my god, it turned out to be the 3rd class orange Reiatsu. No loss as the young master of the Kuchiki family, one of the 5 nobles. The young master of the Tsunayashiro family's generation, seems to have been robbed of the limelight by the Kuchiki family again. Hush, be quiet, the Tsunayashiro's is not a fuel-efficient lamp. Quote. The various academies were talking quietly. Kuchiki Yinling was not moved by everyone's amazement. After the test was completed, he returned to the group of students with a calm attitude. At this time, another teenager in the team looked at Kuchiki Silver Ridge with a vaguely hostile attitude. He is the young master of the Tsunayashiro family, the head of the 5 nobles of this generation, Tsunayashiro Ichiro. Testing on the field continues. When the called Unoka stepped up, with a soft drink, a terrifying Reiatsu burst out from her. At this time, the test stone beside her exudes a burst of crimson light. Hiss. Everyone except Yu Taifeng almost fell to the ground after seeing this scene. The teacher in charge of the test, with a hell-like expression, stammered and said, Unohana. Yakienryu. Red. Special Reiatsu. At this time, the situation on the court was out of control again, and even Kuchiki Yinling, who was originally calm, was full of shocked expressions on his face at this moment. Because every student who has some avenues knows what the Crimson Special Class Reiatsu represents. But Reiatsu who is equivalent to the rank of deputy captain. After the test was completed, Uchiha ignored the shocked eyes of everyone and returned to the team again. After half an hour, Yu Taifeng, who was called by his name, finally walked to the test stone. After taking a deep breath, a burst of Reiatsu burst out of him. After seeing the color of the test stone next to Yu Taifeng, everyone on the field had strange looks. Asterisk. Chapter 22 Challenge Seeking Evaluation of Collection of Flowers. When Yu Taifeng burst out Reiatsu with all his strength, the test stone beside him also changed. A dazzling white light radiated from the test stone. After seeing this scene, everyone on the field showed disdain. Yu Taifeng, white, 1st class Reiatsu. After hearing his own test results, he did not show any disappointment, and left the area with a slight smile. At this time, the colleges off the court began to complain. This is the first time I have seen it, and I can laugh after passing the test. What do you know? He is self-aware. Yes. After all, even if you are a student in the ordinary class, you can become a team member if you graduate successfully. Quote. When Yu Taifeng heard these discussions, he smiled and shook his head. One morning passed quickly. All the students who participated in the test were assigned to the general class, the excellent class and the special class according to their respective Reiatsu level. As for things like Unohana, enrollment reaches the enchantment of Reiatsu at the rank of deputy captain. Not only will they be assigned to a special class, but the school will also arrange for corresponding teachers to train them one-on-one outside of class. All students, please report in their respective classes in the afternoon according to their respective class status. That's it for today's test. Disband. The teacher in charge of organizing the test said loudly. The students who dispersed all around, in accordance with their respective class groups, came together in 2s and 3s and started talking. Yu Taifeng doesn't waste time on making friends. After hearing the password to disband, he walked towards his dormitory alone. At this moment, Uchiha's voice came from behind him. Yu Taifeng, stop. Mao Zihua looked at him with a serious face and shouted loudly. Huh, student Uchiha, what's the matter? Yu Taifeng asked curiously. After the course is over this afternoon, I will challenge you. Uchiha said seriously. The students who gathered in 2s and 3s showed an incredible expression after hearing Uchiha's words. What? I heard that right, did you? Unohana of special class Reiatsu wants to challenge him. This won't be the best way for the special class to give us the normal class, is it? It's hard to say, but I think it's possible. Quote. As Mao Zihua challenged Yu Taifeng, the onlookers began to stop and watch. Read more at mtlarchive.com. Yu Taifeng smiled and said, Miss Mao Zihua, let's wait until we all practice for a while. After all, now, we can't help each other. What do you think? Quote. The onlookers present, after hearing the dialogue between the two, began to talk quietly. The guy in the ordinary class said that Uchiha can't help him. Did you not hear him say, wait for him to practice for a while first? He is not stupid. Poor fellow, I don't know how he offended Uchiha. Now there is a good show to watch. Quote. Since Unohana insists on challenging me, then it is so decided. After giving the other party a satisfactory answer, Yu Taifeng turned and continued to walk in the direction of his dormitory. After the onlookers heard Yu Taifeng's words, the expressions on their faces changed from surprise to playfulness. They couldn't figure it out. The Reiatsu grade was only qualified Yu Taifeng, and Ling accepted the challenge casually. Stupid guy. For the sake of his own face, he can even agree to such a challenge. Isn't it? I think he might be crazy. Don't say that. Although he has no chance of winning at all, I think he is indeed commendable for his courage. What courage is commendable? This is simply bravery. I think it makes sense. Knowing that I can't beat the opponent, I agree to this challenge. He is really stupid. Haha. Although I already know the result, I still look forward to the good show in the afternoon. Quote. At the same time, in Yamamoto's office, a middle-aged man was standing respectfully not far away, reporting to him the situation of the Spiritual Arts Academy's class placement. Captain, the 2 students whom you made me focus on were assigned to the ordinary class and the special class. Do you see what else needs to be adjusted? Quote. Well, so be it. Thank you, Kojima. Yamamoto nodded slightly after hearing the other party's report again. Not long after the middle-aged man left, Ermewu Wang Yu came here violently. Yamamoto, I heard that the little guy was assigned to the normal class. Wang Yu said straightforwardly. Yes, Yamamoto replied while taking the official document on the table seriously. But Yamamoto, you know very well that he definitely shouldn't be assigned to a normal class because of his strength. You are killing genius. Do you know? Wang Yu looked at the busy Yamamoto and said loudly in dissatisfaction. After processing the document in his hand, Yamamoto put down the brush in his hand and looked at Wang Yu with a serious expression. Of course I know what his strength looks like. Although at his Reiatsu level, it is a pity to be assigned to a normal class. But I think that with his abilities in battle, he has a calm personality. One day, I will definitely become a strong person comparable to you and me. As for the division of classes in the college, it is only an external force that the weak can rely on. The real strong have never grown up relying on those external forces. Quote. After hearing Yamamoto's explanation, Wang Yu was still very excited. But what Yamamoto said just now really made him unable to fault. So he can only sulking in anger. I still have business affairs to take care of, please do it yourself. Yamamoto continued to get busy after speaking. You guy, really, unreasonable. Wang Yu, who was so boring, looked at the busy Yamamoto, got up and left the office. One afternoon was fleeting. When the last course was over, the students in the first grade ordinary class did not leave, as if they were waiting for something. Within a short while, there was a noisy sound of footsteps outside the normal classroom. Yu Zihua first walked into this classroom and looked in the direction of Yu Taifeng with a serious face. A few seconds later, the students from different classes of different grades all stopped not far away. After seeing Ujihua, Yu Taifeng left his seat and said with a smile, "Let's go, Ujihua girl." Asterisk. Chapter 23 exclamation from teachers and students seeking evaluation of collection of flowers. Looking at Yu Taifeng with a smile on her face, Yuo Zihua turned and walked outside the classroom. Seeing the figure who left first, Yu Taifeng slowly followed behind. 10 minutes later, the two appeared one after another in a training ground of the Spiritual Arts Academy. At this time, more and more onlookers began to gather, including not only students from all grades, but also some teachers who heard the wind. The administrator in charge of this training ground, after seeing this scene, took out 2 wooden swords and threw them to the 2 of them. Due to the special regulations of the Spiritual Arts Academy, the administrator in charge of the training ground here will not only distribute specially made wooden swords to the students who compete, but also supervise the whole process. In the event of an uncontrollable situation, they will take action to separate the 2 sides of the competition to prevent unnecessary damage to the students. Yu Taifeng, who has played against each other many times, is also full of curiosity. I don't know what kind of tactics Ujihua will use this time. A burst of powerful Reiatsu swept the entire training ground from Unohana as the center. Some of the onlookers who were weak off the court shivered slightly because of this Reiatsu. At this time, both the students and the teachers released the Reiatsu in their bodies one after another to prevent themselves from the impact of this Reiatsu. Look at it. The guy in the normal class hasn't been affected at all. Huh, the tail of an ordinary class crane. It's just holding it. What is the crane tail of the ordinary class? Why don't you go to the special class when you were so good? The normal class is the normal class. Believe it or not, I beat your nose and face. Okay, you all quiet down, otherwise, let me all go out. A teacher looked at the students beside him with a displeased expression, turning his head and shouting angrily. Although both parties who were warned closed their mouths, they had faintly formed different small groups and released their respective Reiatsu in an attempt to deter each other. Although it is not possible to talk about court resistance, they absolutely cannot give in to each other. After all, the number of students in ordinary classes still occupies an absolute advantage. When this episode happened on the spot, the 2 on the training ground were already moving. Kill. After Ujihua gave a tender voice, she raised the wooden sword in her hand and rushed in the direction of the target. After seeing the oncoming Ujihua, Yu Taifeng used Reiatsu to mobilize the link C to the sole of his feet. Suddenly, Yu Taifeng and Mao Zihua got into a fight. Boom boom boom. The sound of wooden swords colliding throughout the martial arts field. After breaking a few breaths, the 2 of them have already used their swords more than a dozen times. Everyone in the onlookers thought that this was a competition without suspense. However, when they saw Yu Taifeng's fearful speed, they couldn't help but look at him. Read more at mtlarchive.com. Ordinary students who just enrolled in school have mastered Shunpo. This is incredible. Does he hide his strength? Shouldn't it? How could the test stone go wrong? How is this possible? I must be dazzled. Quote. Teachers and students off the court, you talked about each other. The competition on the field continued. After a period of confrontation, Taifeng discovered that Ujihua's Reiatsu has increased significantly. Sure enough, she who was able to become the first-generation Kenpachi can indeed be described by her talent. But Sora has a huge Reiatsu, but there are no amazing skills, which really makes Taifeng feel sorry for her. However, he believed that Yimaujihua's talent would definitely be worthy of her Yakianryu name. At the beginning of the battle, the all-knowing and all-powerful Taifeng was turned on, and in this way he has resisted the opponent's attack all the time. He regarded the other party as a little mouse, and tried to learn new skills in this competition. After the last battle, Ujihua seemed to have chosen to abandon some flashy fighting skills when dealing with herself. Attempting to use his huge Reiatsu as the whole card again, relying on the duel of the two Reiatsu to win the battle. If you rely solely on Reiatsu and cannot use other means, Taifeng is really not her opponent. However, at present, whether it is the transfer of Reiatsu, the use of Link C, or the understanding of Kido, Taifeng completely crushed each other in any aspect. The fundamental reason why the two sides have reached a tie for several times is only the serious gap in Reiatsu's level. With a fierce sword on his face again, Taifeng quickly retreated back after his clever unloading. The onlookers off the court had already widened their eyes and didn't know what to say. One is a genius girl with Reiatsu's level comparable to that of the deputy captain, and the other is an ordinary student who has just passed Reiatsu's level. If it weren't for today's wonderful battle, if you were anybody, you wouldn't believe that the two could be tied. 6 parties scold. Condensation. Taifeng snorted softly and used the Kido he had developed a while ago. A cube cage composed of blue spirits instantly trapped Mao Zihua in it. When this huge pressure suddenly fell on Ujihua's body, she poured all of her Reiatsu onto the wooden sword, and slashed to the barrier in front of her fiercely. Lei Chong. Fire. Bing Chong. Sha Chong. Wind. Combine. Following Taifeng's successive soft drinks, the 5 spiritual beams of different colors converged into a 5-color intertwined colored beam, which quickly struck towards the direction of Ujihua. Onlookers on the spot, after seeing this incredible scene, exclaimed one after another. Gosh, what is this? Kido. Is this Kido? Even the teacher in charge of teaching Kido can't do this, right? What kind of evil is this? He must be deliberately waterproof during the test. I just used Shunpo, and now I use this strange Kido again, I must really be dreaming. Should he be the seat officer of Shinigami's team, he came here on purpose to tease us. Taifeng, who had just gotten out of trouble, looked at Taifeng who was doing her old tricks again. There was nothing at this moment. Although her Reiatsu can crush each other, she doesn't know Shunpo and Kido at all. How can she fight this? Ujihua gritted her teeth fiercely, and did not choose to avoid it like last time. Rather, he raised his entire Reiatsu to the peak state, ready to take the blow in the process of counterattack. However, how could Taifeng, who had already used the breath of all things method, give the other party any chance? After moving to Ujihua in an instant, he severely slashed the wooden sword in his hand at the opponent. At this moment, a sudden change occurred. Chapter 24 mix into it seeking evaluation of the collection of flowers. When Taifeng attacked with a sword, he also guessed that Ujihua was ready to carry the attack. When he saw the crazy look in the opponent's eyes, he frowned slightly, and then made a defensive move without hesitation. Full coverage. Reprimand. After a soft drink, a pair of blue Link C armor wrapped Taifeng's whole person. The wooden sword wielded from Ujihua's hand was also cut on the armor in an instant. Crack. With a clear sound, a large crack appeared in the blue Link C's armor. Mao Zihua would never have thought that Taifeng still had a back hand. A hint of surprise flashed in her eyes, and in a blink of an eye she returned to fanaticism. After mobilizing the spirit of wind to his right arm, Taifeng's speed of swinging the sword increased again, changing the direction of attack in an instant. From the abrupt slashing movement, it turned into a backlash. Full coverage. Shen. Hearing the soft voice of Ujihua, she looked at the young man who was close at hand angrily. At this moment, the wooden sword in her hand was like a clay cow entering the sea, as if it had been sucked in by the armor of the soul, unable to move. When she used the overwhelming Reiatsu, trying to get back the situation, I only saw the wooden sword in the opponent's hand, slashing at the blade of his own wooden sword with a strange angle. Snapped. After a crisp sound, the wooden sword in Mao Zihua's hand broke into 2 pieces. When she saw this familiar scene, she knew in her heart that she had lost again. Stop. This time the fight is over. The administrator, who had been observing for a long time, said loudly after seeing this scene. These two in the battlefield are definitely rare talents. He didn't want to accidentally hurt any of them because of his negligence. Otherwise, at that time, if the above blame comes down, I can't bear the responsibility. Who the hell won? Don't you see Ujihua's wooden sword has been broken? Tie. This is a tie at best. Even if it is a tie, that guy has the proud capital. Who just said that ordinary classes are all from the tail of the crane? The crowd onlookers, you started to discuss with each other. Read more at mtlarchive.com. The teachers who were intermingled in it all kept their eyes on the broken wooden sword. These young students must not quite understand what this means. But as teachers, they couldn't be more clear in their hearts. The wooden swords used by the fighters are not just as simple as ordinary wooden swords. Even if it is them, I am afraid they can't cut the wooden sword. Because all wooden swords are made of special materials. Its tenacity is capable of withstanding a full blow from the deputy captain level. However, the seemingly unremarkable young man was able to cut off the opponent's wooden sword directly. Even if there is an element of luck in this, they have to look at the teenager with admiration. Whether it is his calm appearance during the battle, or the magical Kido he uses, it makes people full of curiosity. If Reiatsu's amazing Unohana is a genius, then what is a boy? I'm afraid it's not an exaggeration to call it an evildoer. At this moment, a figure quietly walked out of the onlookers, and hurried away quickly in the direction of the Shinigami headquarters. Although I don't know how you did it, don't you feel ashamed to use this tricky method every time? Although Uchiha felt angry, she could only force herself to accept this reality. It's just a fluke, Yu Taifeng said with a smile looking at the girl in front of her. Huh, one day I will defeat you with my own hands. After a bit bitterly, Uchiha left the Bidu arena quickly. You mean he cut the wooden sword? After hearing the report, Yamamoto Shigekuni, who was busy, lowered his head to deal with official duties, and asked. Yes, Lord Captain, it was indeed what I saw with my own eyes. Okay, the old man knows. Go ahead and do it. After hearing Yamamoto's words, Jiro Kojima, who was reporting on the work, bowed very wisely and said goodbye, and then left the office directly. At this moment, standing behind Yamamoto, Chojiro Sasaki had an expression that hesitated. Chojiro, what do you think of that little guy? Yamamoto slowly raised his head and asked softly. Master Captain, as you said before, he really didn't let you down. Chojiro said respectfully. Well, even the old man has to admit that he has brought us enough surprises. Yamamoto, who was unsmiling, had a rare smile at this moment. Half a year later, it is located in the deadly land adjacent to Rukongai. A group of Shinigami wearing Death Tyrant costumes, holding Zanpakuto in their hands, slowly advancing with a solemn expression. Roar. An angry strange roar resounded over this area. I saw dozens of medium-sized phantoms of various shapes, led by a huge Manos Grande, attack this team of Shinigami. The leader of the team, Shinigami glanced at his subordinates seriously, and exclaimed, Be careful, everyone. It's Gillian. Yes, a crowd of Shinigami shook hands with Zanpakuto, and responded in unison. Yu Taifeng, who also wears a deadly tyrant, is also among them. Resolve these trash fish as soon as possible, and then do your best to eliminate that Gillian. After the leader Shinigami made a battle deployment, he swung his Zanpakuto first to kill him. After a fierce battle, dozens of medium-sized Hollow's vanity souls disappeared, leaving only the huge Gillian watching. With the exception of Yu Taifeng, the other Shinigami in the team have suffered injuries of varying degrees. Among them, one of the ordinary players who just became Shinigami was injured the most. The leader Shinigami glanced at his subordinates, and said bitterly, You guys get out. Find a way to return to Seraiti for help. Yu Taifeng looked at Gillian not far away, as if looking at a rare treasure. At the same time, in Yamamoto's office, Chojiro Sasaki looked embarrassed and said, Your captain. Message from the Spiritual Arts Academy. Yu Taifeng skipped class again, shouldn't he go again? After Yamamoto heard the other party's words, there was a glimmer of light in his eyes, and he shook his head and said, Let him go. Although he is a habitual offender, the old man is very curious about what surprises he will bring us this time. Asterisk. Chapter 25 Reiatsu Growth Plan, Seeking Collection of Flowers Evaluation. The confrontation on the dead air continued, the leader Shinigami stared at Gillian not far away with a solemn expression, and shouted again, Go back and ask for help. Hurry up. After hearing these words, the other team members were a little bit unbearable, but considering the current situation, they gritted their teeth and helped each other to leave quickly. At the moment when the leader Shinigami was distracted, Gillian, who had been staring at him for a long time, suddenly got into trouble. The big hand, like a small mountain, quickly rushed towards the leader Shinigami with the sound of howling wind. The lead Shinigami couldn't imagine that Gillian, who was huge and seemingly clumsy, could be so fast. At this time, a familiar figure suddenly jumped into the air. I saw Yu Taifeng raising Zanpakuto in his hand and swiftly attacking Gillian under the huge Reiatsu package. Quick, come back, are you going to die? The leader Shinigami exclaimed with excitement after seeing this scene. The Shinigami who were helping each other to leave, after hearing the movement here. While continuing to rush towards the border of Shinigami, I glanced back nervously. He's crazy. What does he want to do? That's Gillian. Gosh, go back and ask for help first. Quote. In the eyes of Shinigami who are seeking help, Yu Taifeng's move is undoubtedly self-defeating. They don't believe that the new Shinigami, who joined them temporarily, has the power to rival Gillian. After exclaiming for a while, they shook their heads slightly, and then walked away quickly without looking back. Full coverage. Reprimand. Yu Taifeng snorted softly, and the whole body was completely protected by a pair of lynx sea armor. He had quickly reached the position of Gillian's head in a flash of light. At this time, he shook Zanpakuto in his hand fiercely, pouring all the Reiatsu in his body into it. Zanpakuto hit Gillian's head impartially, making a oozing rubbing sound. Although, this blow did not cause any fatal damage. But somehow it broke through the defense, causing some damage to it. Even beasts with low IQ will resist with all their strength when attacked. What's more, Gillian also belongs to Manos Grande's category anyway, and will definitely not be stupid enough to be slaughtered. After Yu Taifeng succeeded in hitting his hand, both hands clasped Zanpakuto who had pierced Gillian's head. Read more at mtlarchive.com. He exhausted his whole body of Reiatsu, tried to mobilize the spirits of the wind around him, and blessed these spirits on the weapons in his hand. One of Hado Chong, with Yu Taifeng yelling again, an invisible soul, starting from Zanpakuto, swiftly struck towards the sky. A dazzling red ball of light began to quickly condense in Gillian's mouth. Sorry, it's Sero. This is really over. The leader Shinigami now has an urge to vomit blood. If it hadn't been for him to temporarily agree to join the stranger Shinigami, maybe things would not develop to where they are now. Not only him, but those Shinigami who were on their way for help, when they saw the red ball of light in Gillian's mouth, they all showed desperate expressions. Sero played by Manos Grande is definitely not something ordinary Shinigami like them can bear. Yu Taifeng at this time was due to the reaction force that just rushed. At an indescribable speed, he quickly slid down from Gillian's head to the waist. He clasped Zanpakuto who had pierced into Gillian's body, and during the entire sliding process, he pulled out a huge gap of tens of meters long. Scarlet blood is like a small waterfall, spewing out from the hideous wound, weird and bloody. When Sero in Gillian's mouth was finished brewing, it shook its head angrily and knocked Sero out. With a destructive force wrapped in the red Sero, it quickly smashed towards the ground. Rumble, a shocking explosion sounded from a cloud of red mushrooms. With this mushroom cloud as the center, it is wrapped within a radius of 100 meters. Following a scream, several Shinigami with low strength and bad luck were directly shocked into fly ash by Sero's power. When the survivors saw this scene, they all looked at the distant scene with lingering fears. Under the protection of Lingxi's armor, Yu Taifeng used Reiatsu to transfer Lingxi to the bottom of his feet, and once again swiftly attacked Gillian's head. After a dozen high-speed displacements, he also came to the back of Gillian's head. 6 parties scold. Condensation. After a soft drink, the blue cube Lingxi cage wrapped Gillian's entire head. Because of the huge wound on his body, Gillian, who had already lost his mind, began to brew Sero again. Yu Taifeng saw all this in his eyes, his face rose slightly and he whispered, "Hey." The Lingxi cage, which was still shrinking, was like a helmet at the moment, firmly fixed to Gillian's head. Double coverage. Reprimand. When Yu Taifeng once again mobilized the spirit sun of the whole body, a hollow spirit sun ball in the shape of an eggshell protected him. As the Sero in Gillian's mouth was brewing again, it angrily shot Sero out. However, all of this is in Yu Taifeng's plan. A group of red light shone on Gillian's head. Although the helmet on his head was not stable, it was enough to hinder Sero. Rumble. With a huge explosion sounded through the sky, a cloud of red mushrooms appeared on Gillian's entire head. Yu Taifeng, who had already left early, returned to the ground again with this powerful impact. The violent explosion continued, and within a short while the huge Gillian fell heavily to the ground. Yu Taifeng's original serious face finally showed a smile. At this time, the box that Gillian dropped after his death is particularly conspicuous. The harvest this time seems to be greater than ever before, Yu Taifeng secretly said in his heart. At this time, he couldn't help but think of the scene where he first pretended to be a Shinigami player and joined it 6 months ago. As for the Death Tyrant outfit on his body and the Zanpakuto in his hand, they were still picked up before entering Seraiti. He didn't expect that such a place would be used. Pretend to be a Shinigami team member, and randomly join a certain team to conquer the void. In the process of conquering the virtual, use the convenience of the box picking system to enhance your own strength. After 6 months of experience, Yu Taifeng's Reiatsu level has been infinitely close to the Deputy Captain Reiatsu level. Ding. The box around the host is detected. Is the host turned on? The system prompt appeared in his mind. Yu Taifeng responded with a chuckle. Turn on.